Zhang Wei's consciousness slammed into his new body like a freight train hitting a brick wall. One moment he was lying in his cramped Beijing apartment, scrolling through yet another trashy web novel on his phone, some generic death game story with an overpowered protagonist and disposable side characters. The next, white light seared his retinas, and his lungs burned as if he'd been holding his breath for hours. He gasped, sucking in sterile, filtered air that tasted of ozone and antiseptic. His hands, not his hands, clutched at a smooth, cold surface. He was lying on his back, staring up at a ceiling of seamless white panels illuminated by harsh, shadowless light. Where? Memories that weren't his own flooded his mind in a disorienting torrent. Lin Feng. 18 years old. Arrogant young master of the Lin conglomerate. Spoiled, entitled, convinced the world existed to serve him. A character from the very novel he'd been reading, Death Game Arena, 100 players, 1 survivor. And not just any character. The first victim. Zhang Wei pushed himself up, his muscles responding with unfamiliar coordination. He wore sleek black tactical gear that hugged his lean frame, the material whisper quiet when he moved. Around him, 99 other figures were stirring in identical white pods arranged in neat rows across a vast, circular chamber. The room was at least 200 meters in diameter, its curved walls featureless except for occasional ventilation grates and what looked like sealed doorways. "This isn't real," he whispered, but the words came out in Lin Feng's voice, slightly higher, more nasal than his own. A digital chime echoed through the chamber, crystalline and cold. A holographic display flickered to life in the center of the room, projecting a rotating emblem of interlocking gears and blood-red circuitry. "Welcome, contestants." The voice was genderless, synthetic, and carried the weight of absolute authority. It seemed to come from everywhere at once, vibrating through the floor and into Zhang Wei's bones. "You have been selected to participate in the ultimate survival arena. 100 players. 1 victor. The rules are simple: survive the shrinking safe zone, eliminate your competitors, and claim the grand prize." Panic erupted like a physical wave. A woman screamed. A man charged toward one of the sealed doors, pounding on it with his fists. Someone else vomited onto the pristine white floor. Zhang Wei remained frozen, his mind racing. He knew this scene. Chapter 1, Paragraph 4. The arrogant young master Lin Feng would strut forward, demand to speak to the person in charge, and get gutted by the protagonist within 3 minutes of the game starting. His eyes scanned the crowd, searching. There, near the eastern wall. A young man with sharp features and dark hair, moving with predatory grace even as others stumbled in confusion. Li Chen. The protagonist. His eyes already held that calculating gleam, assessing threats, planning his first move. Zhang Wei's heart hammered against his ribs. He had maybe 2 minutes before Li Chen noticed him. Less, if he drew attention to himself. The holographic display shifted, showing a map of the arena, a complex of interconnected chambers labeled with letters and numbers. A red circle began shrinking from the outer edges inward. The safe zone will begin contracting in 10 minutes. Areas outside the zone will be subjected to lethal environmental hazards. Players scrambled, some forming hasty alliances, others pushing through the crowd toward what they thought were exits. Zhang Wei backed away, keeping his head down. He needed to find cover. Somewhere Li Chen wouldn't look. Somewhere. His vision glitched. For a fraction of a second, the world fractured into overlapping layers of reality. The white wall behind him shimmered, and glowing text appeared like subtitles burned directly into his retinas. Asterisk concealed ventilation shaft, leads to Armory B, collapses in 17 minutes due to protagonist's fight, asterisk. Zhang Wei blinked. The text remained, hovering in the air just above the wall's surface. It was written in the same font as the web novel's chapter headings back on his phone. A plot spoiler interface. The realization hit him with dizzying force. This was his cheat. Not super strength, not magic, not some system that granted him levels and skills. Just, knowledge. Cryptic annotations about the story he was now trapped inside. He didn't hesitate. While other players were still processing the announcement, Zhang Wei moved. He reached the wall, his fingers searching the seamless surface. The annotation pulsed gently, drawing his attention to a section about waist-high. There, an almost imperceptible seam. He pressed, and a panel slid aside with a soft hiss, revealing a dark ventilation shaft just large enough to crawl through. "Hey! What's that?" A voice called out from behind him. Zhang Wei didn't turn. He dropped to his knees and scrambled into the darkness, pulling the panel closed behind him just as footsteps approached. The shaft was cramped, the metal walls cool against his skin. Dust filled his nostrils, and the only light came from faint emergency strips along the floor. He crawled forward, the annotation still visible in his peripheral vision, now with a timer counting down, 1642. 1641. His mind raced, processing information in frantic bursts. Armory B. That was mentioned in Chapter 3. A secondary weapons cache that most players overlooked because the main armory was more obvious. It contained non-lethal equipment, stun grenades, flashbangs, smoke canisters. Tools for escape, not combat. Perfect for someone who couldn't hope to match the protagonist in a direct fight. The shaft branched twice. Each time, new annotations flickered into existence, pointing the way. Asterisk left path leads to dead end trapped with pressure plates, asterisk. Asterisk right path continues toward Armory B, but section ahead weakened by structural damage, asterisk. Zhang Wei took the right path, moving more carefully now. The metal beneath him groaned ominously. He could see cracks in the welds where the ductwork joined the main structure. He redistributed his weight, crawling along the edges rather than the center. From below, sounds filtered up through the grates, screams, the crackle of energy weapons, the wet thud of impacts. The game had begun in earnest. Zhang Wei forced himself not to think about what was happening. He focused on the countdown in his vision, 1422. 1421. Ahead, light spilled from another grate. He reached it, peering down into a small, dimly lit room. Racks lined the walls, holding an assortment of tactical gear. Armory B. The grate was secured with 4 simple latches. No electronic locks, no biometric scanners. This room wasn't meant to be heavily defended, it was a bonus for observant players. Zhang Wei worked the latches, his fingers trembling slightly from adrenaline. The metal was cool and slightly oily under his touch. The grate swung open. He dropped down, landing in a crouch on concrete flooring. The room smelled of grease and ozone. His eyes scanned the racks. There, a row of cylindrical stun grenades, each about the size of his palm. He grabbed 2, securing them to his belt. A compact medical kit followed, then a pair of low-light goggles. Another annotation appeared over a seemingly blank section of wall. Asterisk hidden compartment contains prototype motion sensor, unreleased in original plot, asterisk. Zhang Wei pressed the indicated spot. A panel slid back, revealing a small, disc-shaped device with a single activation button. He pocketed it. Every advantage mattered. The mental strain was beginning to tell. Processing the spoilers felt like trying to read a book while running a marathon. Each annotation carried not just information, but context, fragments of the original narrative that he had to interpret on the fly. He could feel a headache building behind his eyes, sharp and insistent. A thunderous impact shook the entire structure. Dust rained from the ceiling. Somewhere above him, metal screamed as it tore. The fight. Li Chen was engaging another player, and their battle was destabilizing the ventilation system. The countdown in his vision accelerated, 2:15. 2:14. The collapse was coming early. Zhang Wei scrambled back toward the shaft. He had to get out before the entire section came down on top of him. He jumped, caught the edge of the opening, and hauled himself up just as another impact rocked the facility. The metal around him groaned like a dying animal. He crawled faster now, ignoring the scrapes and bruises. The shaft tilted, the angle becoming steeper as supports gave way. He reached a junction where another grate looked down onto a larger chamber. Below, the fight was ending. Li Chen stood over the body of a player twice his size. The larger man's tactical armor was torn open, revealing ruined flesh beneath. Li Chen wasn't even breathing heavily. He held an energy blade that hummed with barely contained power, its edge glowing blue-white. But it was Li Chen's eyes that froze Zhang Wei's blood. They glowed with an inner light, predatory, calculating, utterly devoid of mercy. This wasn't the protagonist from the web novel. That Li Chen had been powerful, yes, but there had been hints of compassion, a moral code. This version looked like he enjoyed it. The annotation in Zhang Wei's vision flickered, the text distorting. Asterisk protagonist's fate diverging from original plot. Glitch detected in narrative consistency, asterisk. Then Li Chen turned. Slowly, deliberately, his head rotated until he was looking directly at the ventilation grate where Zhang Wei hid. Those glowing eyes narrowed. A faint, cold smile touched Li Chen's lips. He knew. Zhang Wei stopped breathing. The stun grenade felt suddenly heavy on his belt. The shaft around him creaked, dust sifting down like gray snow. Somewhere, metal groaned as it continued to collapse. But all he could see were those eyes, staring up through the grate, seeing him, marking him. The first victim had just avoided his fate. And the protagonist had noticed. The stale air of armory clung to Lin Feng's skin as he pushed open the rusted maintenance hatch, emerging into a sterile white corridor that stretched endlessly in both directions. The transition from cramped ventilation shafts to this clinical expanse was jarring, like stepping from a tomb into a laboratory. His low-light goggles, scavenged just minutes earlier, automatically adjusted to the harsh fluorescent lighting that buzzed with an artificial intensity. He could still feel the phantom vibrations of Li Chen's battle above, the memory of that effortless kill replaying behind his eyes. The protagonist's glowing predatory gaze had burned itself into his memory, a warning that even with foreknowledge, this world's dangers were visceral and immediate. A sudden chime echoed through the corridor, crisp and artificial. The system's voice followed, genderless and devoid of emotion, first safe zone contraction in 30 seconds. All players must proceed to Central Plaza within 5 minutes. Failure to comply will result in elimination. Panicked footsteps erupted from side corridors. Players Lin Feng hadn't seen before, a man with tactical armor, a woman clutching a makeshift spear, 3 others in various states of disarray, sprinted past him, their faces etched with desperation. The promise of safety was a powerful lure in this lethal arena. Then his interface flickered to life. Asterisk safe zone is trap, pressure plates in plaza activate turrets in 5 minutes, asterisk. The words burned crimson against his vision, stark and unambiguous. Zhang Wei's breath caught. In the original novel, this was where dozens of side characters died, cannon fodder to demonstrate the game's cruelty. The safe zone wasn't sanctuary, it was a slaughterhouse designed to thin the herd. He forced himself to think. The annotation gave him 5 minutes. The system gave players 5 minutes to reach the plaza. The timing wasn't coincidence, it was engineered carnage. As more players rushed past, Lin Feng noticed a slight figure hesitating at a corridor junction 20 meters away. A young woman with dark hair pulled into a messy bun, her hands trembling as she clutched a basic first aid kit. Her eyes darted between the fleeing players and the shadows behind her. Mei Ling. The name surfaced from his spoiler memories. In the original plot, she'd been one of the first to die in the plaza trap, crushed by falling debris after the turrets opened fire. A footnote character, forgotten by everyone except readers who tracked body counts. Lin Feng moved without conscious decision, his body acting on instinct honed by a lifetime of reading survival narratives. He crossed the distance in quick strides, his motion sensor, the prototype device from Armory, humming softly in his pocket. It detected no immediate threats, but its range was limited. "Don't go to the plaza," he said, his voice lower than he intended. Mei Ling flinched, her eyes widening. The system said. The system is lying. Lin Feng kept his tone flat, factual. No room for panic to seep in. Pressure plates in the plaza activate hidden turrets exactly when the safe zone supposedly stabilizes. Her gaze flickered to his equipment, the stun grenade on his belt, the medical kit, the goggles. A calculating look passed over her face, replacing some of the fear. "How do you know?" "I have sources." Vague, but true enough. He couldn't explain the interface without sounding insane. Footsteps echoed from a side passage, heavy, confident. Lin Feng's instincts screamed. He grabbed Mei Ling's arm and pulled her into an alcove housing a malfunctioning cleaning drone. They pressed against cold metal as Li Chen strode past, not even glancing their way. The protagonist moved with predatory grace, a blood-stained short sword in one hand. His eyes glowed faintly, not with the fierce intensity Lin Feng had witnessed earlier, but with a cold, analytical light. He was hunting, but not randomly. He moved with purpose toward the plaza. "He's going to use the chaos," Lin Feng murmured, the realization clicking into place. "The turrets will scatter survivors, make them easy prey." Mei Ling's breathing hitched. "We can't stay here. The system will eliminate us if we don't reach the safe zone. There's always a loophole." Lin Feng closed his eyes, focusing on his interface. Asterisk show me alternatives. Escape routes. Hidden paths, asterisk. The screen flickered, lines of text scrolling too fast to read. Then it stabilized. Asterisk ventilation access 15 meters east leads to maintenance catwalks above plaza. Structural weakness, support column B7 will collapse during turret activation. Provides both observation and escape route, asterisk. Asterisk warning, multiple anomalous readings detected. Regressor presence confirmed, asterisk. Regressor. The term meant nothing from his original novel knowledge. But the interface updated before he could process it. Asterisk Zhao Min, regressor from sequel, observes from shadows, plotting to hijack game. Current location, observation deck overlooking plaza. Utilizing backdoor access to system monitoring, asterisk. Sequel. The word hit him like a physical blow. This wasn't just the novel he'd read, this was something larger, a continuity he hadn't anticipated. And someone from that future timeline was here, now, with knowledge that might dwarf his own. We need to move, Lin Feng said, forcing calm into his voice. There's ventilation access east. It'll get us above the plaza without entering it. Mei Ling hesitated only a second before nodding. The timid side character was still there in her trembling hands, but her eyes held a stubborn determination. She'd chosen to trust him, a decision that might save her life. They moved quickly but quietly, Lin Feng leading with his motion sensor extended. The device chirped once, a single blip from behind them that vanished as quickly as it appeared. Someone following? Or just system interference? The ventilation grate was exactly where the interface indicated, hidden behind a decorative panel that came loose with a firm tug. The space beyond was tight, but navigable. Lin Feng went first, crawling into darkness before activating his goggles' infrared function. The world shifted to green and black contours. They climbed a rusted ladder, emerging onto a network of catwalks suspended 20 meters above the plaza. The view was both magnificent and horrifying. Central Plaza was a circular space 100 meters across, floored with polished white tiles that reflected the artificial sky, a dome displaying a fake sunset. Players streamed in from all directions, clustering near the center where a holographic timer counted down the safe zone's activation, 2:47. 2:46. Lin Feng counted at least 40 people below. Some had formed small groups, backs together, weapons ready. Others stood alone, eyes darting nervously. A few, likely Chen, positioned themselves near exits, not for safety, but for hunting opportunities. Mei Ling crouched beside him, her breath fogging in the chilly air. The pressure plates. Look at the tile pattern. Lin Feng pointed. See how every third tile has a slightly different sheen. Those are the triggers. As players moved, they inevitably stepped on those tiles. Nothing happened yet, but Lin Feng's interface displayed a secondary countdown synchronized with the holographic timer, turrets activate in 1:22. Then he saw him. In a shadowed observation deck built into the plaza's western wall, barely visible behind one-way glass, a figure stood perfectly still. Zhao Min. Even at this distance, details emerged through Lin Feng's enhanced goggles, a man in unremarkable gray fatigues, average height, average build. Nothing stood out except his posture, utterly relaxed, hands clasped behind his back, observing the plaza like a chess master surveying a board. And his eyes. They glowed not with Li Chen's predatory light, but with something colder, the pale blue of system interfaces, of data streams, of someone who'd seen this game play out before. Lin Feng's headache returned, a sharp spike behind his temples. The interface flickered, annotations overlapping. Asterisk Zhao Min utilizing regressor ability, temporal echo. Can predict system announcements with 87% accuracy, asterisk. Asterisk warning, regressor has detected anomalous player data. Your presence diverges from original timeline, asterisk. Asterisk Zhao Min's current objective, hijack game core by sacrificing 20 players during turret activation. Backdoor access requires blood-based ritual, asterisk. Sacrifices. Rituals. This wasn't just survival anymore, it was something darker, more systematic. Zhao Min wasn't playing the game, he was trying to rewrite its rules. What is it? Mei Ling whispered, noticing his tension. There's another player. Up there. Lin Feng nodded toward the observation deck. He's not just surviving. He's engineering something. Below, the timer reached 0:30. Players grew restless, some cheering as the final seconds ticked down. The promise of safety was a drug, and they were all addicts. 0:10. Lin Feng's interface flashed urgent red, asterisk turrets activating in 5. 4, asterisk he grabbed Mei Ling's shoulder, pulling her lower against the catwalk. Cover your ears. Midnight. The holographic timer dissolved into the words, "Safe zone active," in cheerful green letters. For one heartbeat, there was silence. Then the screaming started. Hidden panels slid open around the plaza's perimeter, and turrets emerged, sleek, black, rotating with mechanical precision. They didn't hesitate. Muzzles flashed, and the first barrage cut through the crowd. Players near the center died instantly, bodies torn apart by high-caliber rounds. Those near the edges scrambled for cover, but the turrets tracked them with inhuman accuracy. A man made it 3 steps before his leg vanished in a spray of blood and bone. A woman dove behind a decorative planter, but the turret simply shot through it, through her. Li Chen moved like lightning. He'd positioned himself behind a structural column, and as the turrets focused on the panicking crowd, he darted from cover to cover, not fleeing but circling, waiting for survivors to emerge from the slaughter. The plaza became a charnel house. Blood splattered across white tiles, creating grotesque patterns. The air filled with the stench of cordite and copper and opened bowels. Through it all, the system's voice remained calm, safe zone stability compromised. Adjusting parameters. A lie atop a lie. Lin Feng forced himself to watch, to memorize. The turret's firing patterns, their blind spots, their reload cycles, every detail might matter later. His interface annotated the chaos. Asterisk turrets model TX-7, 3-second burst fire, 1.5-second reload. Weakness, overheat if continuous fire exceeds 15 seconds, asterisk. Asterisk structural integrity of support column B, 7 degrading. Collapse imminent, asterisk. The column in question stood near the plaza's eastern edge. Cracks spiderwebbed up its surface, spreading with each turret burst that struck nearby tiles. Mei Ling gagged beside him, turning away from the carnage. Lin Feng didn't blame her. This wasn't like reading descriptions in a novel, this was viscera and death throes, the wet sounds of bodies falling, the final choked breaths. Then his interface glitched. Text scrambled, reformed, scrambled again. The headache became a vice around his skull. Zhao Min was doing something, activating his backdoor, manipulating the system. The regressor's glow brightened behind the observation glass, pale blue light bleeding through. Lin Feng made a decision. He focused on his interface, pushing against the glitch, demanding information, asterisk track Zhao Min's movements. Predict his next action, asterisk. The system resisted. Warnings flashed, asterisk information overload risk. Interface stability compromised, asterisk. He ignored them. He needed to know what the regressor planned, needed to see the next move in this deadly game. He visualized the data stream, imagined forcing it through narrowing pathways, sacrificing clarity for raw data. The interface shattered into fragments of insight. Asterisk Zhao Min accessing sacrifice protocol. 14/20 players eliminated, ritual threshold approaching, asterisk. Asterisk regressor preparing to hijack game core, requires direct system terminal access, terminal located, asterisk. The location data glitched, replaced by static. Asterisk warning, anomaly detected in player 47, Lin Feng. Divergence from original timeline confirmed. Regressor awareness, high, asterisk. The headache peaked, white-hot needles behind his eyes. Lin Feng gasped, vision blurring. He'd overloaded the interface, traded clear spoilers for fragmented warnings. What had he lost? What crucial detail had been sacrificed in that burst of force data? Below, the turrets fell silent simultaneously. Their barrels glowed cherry red, overheating exactly as predicted. The survivors, maybe 10 out of 40, crawled from cover, wounded, shell-shocked. Li Chen emerged from shadow, his sword gleaming. He moved toward the nearest survivor, a young man clutching a bleeding arm. Then the observation deck's glass door slid open. Zhao Min stepped out. He didn't hurry. He descended a short staircase to plaza level, his footsteps echoing in the sudden quiet. The regressor ignored Li Chen, ignored the survivors, ignored the corpses littering the tiles. His pale blue eyes scanned the catwalks. And found Lin Feng. Across the blood-drenched plaza, through smoke and lingering dust, their gazes locked. Zhao Min's lips curved into a small, knowing smirk. Not surprise. Not curiosity. Recognition. He raised one hand, not in threat, but in acknowledgement, a chess player tipping his king to an unexpected opponent. Then the interface delivered one final, glitched message before going dark. Asterisk game change detected. New variable confirmed. The story fractures here, asterisk. And in the silence of the broken safe zone, with Li Chen watching from one side and Zhao Min smirking from the other, Lin Feng understood, he was no longer just avoiding death. He'd become something the story hadn't planned for. An anomaly. A fracture. And both the protagonist and the regressor had taken notice. The metallic scent of blood hung thick in the air, mingling with the acrid ozone smell of the death game's artificial atmosphere. Zhang Wei, still adjusting to being called Lin Feng, pressed his back against the cold steel wall of the maintenance corridor, his breathing shallow and controlled. Beside him, Mei Ling trembled, her knuckles white around the rusted pipe she'd scavenged from the ventilation system. They'd been running for what felt like hours, ever since Zhao Min's knowing smirk had frozen them in place on the catwalks above Central Plaza. The regressor hadn't pursued them directly, but the game itself seemed to have taken notice of their survival. The system had spawned new threats, escalating the difficulty as promised by the plot spoiler interface's fragmented warnings. Lin Feng's head throbbed with the aftermath of his interface overload. The once clear annotations now swam in his vision like half-remembered dreams, flickering between clarity and static. He blinked hard, focusing on the most immediate warning that refused to fade. Asterisk mutation detected in Sector 7C, Beast classification, Alpha-class predator. Weak point, underbelly scar tissue, exposed during vocalization sequence, asterisk. Vocalization sequence, he muttered, translating the interface's clinical language. When it roars. Mei Ling's whisper cut through his thoughts. Do you hear that? He did. A low, guttural growl reverberated through the corridor walls, vibrating in his bones. It wasn't like the mutated rats or insectoid drones they'd glimpsed from a distance, this was something larger, something designed to hunt players who'd survived the initial culling. The maintenance corridor dead-ended ahead at a sealed blast door, its control panel dark and unresponsive. Trapped. Lin Feng's mind raced through the spoilers he could still access. The ventilation shafts were too narrow here, the walls too thick to breach with their limited tools. His inventory flashed in his mind's eye: stun grenade from Armory B, medical kit, low-light goggles, prototype motion sensor. The grenade was their only offensive option. When it comes, he said, his voice surprisingly steady, it'll roar before it attacks. That's when we strike. Strike with what? Mei Ling's voice trembled. This pipe. The scar on its belly. Your pipe goes there. He pressed the stun grenade into her free hand. I'll disorient it. You hit the weak point. Don't hesitate. She stared at the grenade as if it were a live serpent. I've never. Neither have I, Lin Feng interrupted. But the alternative is being torn apart. The growl intensified, accompanied by the scrape of claws on metal. Shadows shifted at the far end of the corridor where they'd entered. Lin Feng activated his low-light goggles, the world washing into shades of green and black. The creature emerged from the darkness, and his breath caught. It stood nearly 8 feet tall on reverse-jointed legs, its body a grotesque fusion of organic muscle and cybernetic plating. Razor-sharp mandibles clicked beneath glowing red optical sensors, while hydraulic pistons hissed along its limbs. But Lin Feng's eyes went immediately to the underbelly, a patch of puckered, discolored flesh visible between armor plates, exactly where the interface had indicated. The beast's sensors locked onto them. Its chest plates separated, and a deep, resonant roar erupted from its vocal synthesizer, shaking dust from the ceiling. The sound was physically painful, a wave of pressure that made Lin Feng's ears pop. Now, he shouted. Mei Ling fumbled with the grenade, her fingers slipping on the activation pin. Lin Feng snatched it back, pulled the pin, and threw it in a low arc. The grenade bounced once, twice, then detonated at the creature's feet with a concussive whump that wasn't so much heard as felt. A flash of blinding white light filled the corridor, followed by a high-frequency whine that made the beast stagger, its sensors flickering erratically. For 3 precious seconds, the predator was disoriented, its head swinging blindly as it roared again in confusion, exposing the scarred underbelly completely. Mei Ling. Lin Feng screamed. She moved. All her fear seemed to crystallize into a single, desperate lunge. The rusted pipe whistled through the air as she brought it down with both hands, putting her entire body weight behind the strike. The metal tip sank into the scar tissue with a wet, tearing sound that turned Lin Feng's stomach. The beast's roar became a shriek of pure agony. Blackish fluid sprayed from the wound, sizzling where it hit the floor. Cybernetic systems sparked and failed along its body as the creature convulsed, its limbs thrashing wildly. Mei Ling yanked the pipe free and struck again, and again, until the beast collapsed in a twitching heap of metal and flesh. Silence fell, broken only by their ragged breathing and the drip of fluids from the corpse. Mei Ling dropped the pipe, her hands shaking violently. I killed it. We killed it, Lin Feng corrected, though his own legs felt like water. He approached cautiously, his interface updating. Asterisk threat neutralized. Biomass contains trace energy signatures useful for crafting. Recommend harvesting before system reclamation, asterisk. He ignored the suggestion, they had no tools for harvesting monster parts, and the thought made him nauseous. Instead, he focused on Mei Ling, you saved us both. She looked at him, her eyes wide with shock and something else, a dawning realization that she wasn't doomed to die as her original fate dictated. You knew where to hit it. I have information, Lin Feng said carefully. About this place. About what's coming. Like how you knew about the turrets in the plaza. He nodded. The alliance was forming, fragile as glass but necessary. The interface flickered, showing him Mei Ling's original plotline, asterisk character, Mei Ling fate, crushed under collapsing bridge in Sector 9, Chapter 3. Cause of death, structural failure triggered by weight limit exceeded, asterisk. He had to change that. He had to change everything. We need to move, he said, offering her a hand up. The system will send more. But I know where there are resource caches the other players haven't found. For the next hour, they navigated the labyrinth and underbelly of the death game arena. Lin Feng guided them using his flickering interface, which showed hidden passages and trap locations that would have been invisible otherwise. They avoided pressure plates that would have triggered flamethrowers, sidestepped laser grids disguised as maintenance lighting, and bypassed a room filled with dormant combat drones. Along the way, Lin Feng shared carefully curated spoilers, enough to keep them alive, not enough to reveal the full extent of his knowledge. He told Mei Ling about a medical cache in a disused locker room, where they found additional bandages and painkillers. He warned her about a corridor that appeared safe but was actually a deadfall trap, its floor designed to collapse into a pit of spikes. With each revelation, the mental strain increased. Juggling multiple spoilers felt like trying to hold water in his bare hands, the more he tried to contain, the more leaked through his fingers. Headaches bloomed behind his eyes, sharp and persistent. The interface's annotation sometimes doubled, showing conflicting information that he had to parse through sheer willpower. Asterisk upcoming resource, energy cells in storage bay 4, asterisk. Asterisk warning, storage bay 4 compromised by structural damage, asterisk. Which was true? Both? Neither. He had to make snap decisions, trusting his gut when the interface failed him. Their path eventually led them to Sector 9 and the bridge the interface had warned about, a narrow span of grated metal stretching over a 50-foot drop into darkness below. The bridge swayed slightly even without weight on it, its support cables groaning. Asterisk structural integrity, 42%. Weight limit, 2 average human masses. Exceeding limit triggers collapse sequence, asterisk. We cross one at a time, Lin Feng said. Slowly. Don't run. Mei Ling went first, her steps deliberate and light. The bridge creaked ominously but held. Halfway across, she froze as a system announcement echoed through the arena. Contestants. The safe zone will contract in 30 minutes. New boundary, Central Plaza and adjacent sectors. Move or be eliminated. Panic flashed across her face. The original plot had her dying here, rushing across the bridge when a similar announcement played, causing her to run and exceed the weight limit. Don't rush. Lin Feng called. Take your time. The announcement is early, we have longer than 30 minutes. His interface confirmed it, asterisk safe zone contraction, actual time remaining, 47 minutes. System announcement contains false urgency to trigger panic movements, asterisk. Mei Ling reached the other side, her breath coming in relieved gasps. Lin Feng followed, his own crossing uneventful. As his foot touched solid ground on the far side, the interface updated. Asterisk fate alteration confirmed, character Mei Ling survival probability increased from 0% to 68%. Ripple effect, minor plot deviation detected, asterisk. The cost was immediate, a spike of pain so intense he nearly blacked out, vision swimming with static. He stumbled against the wall, pressing his palms to his temples. Lin Feng. Mei Ling was at his side. What's wrong? Headache, he managed. From, processing information. She helped him sit, retrieving water from their supplies. As he drank, his interface flickered again, this time highlighting a previously unnoticed panel in the wall, a hidden compartment. Inside, they found not weapons or medicine, but something stranger, a small, leather-bound diary. The pages were filled with cramped, frantic handwriting. Lin Feng flipped through, his eyes catching phrases that made his blood run cold. They're watching us from somewhere else, other dimensions maybe. The pain isn't real, it's manufactured for their entertainment. Sometimes I see glitches in the arena, like reality itself is a simulation. They cheer when we die. I've heard them. Mei Ling read over his shoulder, her face pale. Is this real? Before Lin Feng could answer, his interface erupted with conflicting information, the annotations overlapping and contradicting in a dizzying cascade. Asterisk next safe zone, northern sectors. Primary threat, automated sentry guns, asterisk. Asterisk next safe zone, eastern sectors. Primary threat, environmental collapse, asterisk. Asterisk next safe zone, central plaza only. Primary threat, player concentration leading to forced combat, asterisk. 3 different predictions, all labeled with high confidence. The interface glitched violently, the words fragmenting into nonsense before reforming. Asterisk system anomaly detected. Spoiler reliability compromised. Cause, external narrative interference, asterisk. Lin Feng stared at the diary in his hands, then at the glitching interface, then at Mei Ling's terrified face. The pieces clicked together with horrible clarity. The game wasn't just a death match, it was entertainment for unseen audiences. And his spoilers, his only advantage, were becoming unreliable because the story itself was changing. And they were standing right in the middle of it. The metallic tang of blood still hung in the air, a ghostly reminder of the Plaza massacre. Lin Feng leaned against the cold concrete wall of the maintenance corridor, his head pounding with the aftershocks of the interface's contradictory predictions. 3 different safe zones, 3 different threats, all flashing simultaneously in his vision like competing prophecies. Mei Ling crouched beside him, her knuckles white around the blood-stained pipe she'd used to kill the mutated beast. Your eyes, they're flickering again, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the distant hum of the arena's machinery. Lin Feng blinked, forcing his focus. The plot spoiler interface shimmered before him, lines of text overlapping and distorting like reflections in broken glass. Then, amidst the chaos, one annotation burned through with sudden clarity. Asterisk protagonist Li Chen heading to Control Room Alpha. Objective, disable perimeter security systems. ETA, 12 minutes. Warning, hidden explosive charge set by regressor Zhao Min in ventilation shaft C7. Detonation would collapse entire western sector, asterisk. Control room, Lin Feng breathed, the words tasting like salvation and danger mixed together. Li Chen's going there to shut down security. Zhao Min's rigged it to blow. Mei Ling's eyes widened. If it collapses the western sector, that's where the next safe zone might be. Half the remaining players would die instantly. More than half, Lin Feng corrected, his mind already racing through possibilities. The interface provided another line, this one pulsing with urgency, asterisk maintenance tunnel gamma provides fastest route. Access through collapsed storage room 3B. Warning, motion-activated laser grid in section 4, asterisk. He pushed off the wall, the motion sending fresh waves of pain through his temples. We need to get there first. Disarm the charge before Li Chen arrives. Why? Mei Ling asked, though she was already gathering their scavenged supplies, the medical kit, the low-light goggles, the prototype motion sensor Lin Feng had taken from Armory B. Let Zhao Min's trap kill Li Chen. Wouldn't that solve our biggest problem? Lin Feng shook his head, the movement making the world tilt slightly. If Li Chen dies here, the entire plot unravels. The system would compensate with something worse. Probably trigger an emergency protocol that wipes everyone out. He tapped his temple. The interface showed me that much before it started glitching. The game needs its protagonist. He didn't add the other reason, the one that felt like ice in his gut. If Li Chen died now, the system would know for certain that something was wrong. That an anomaly was manipulating events. And anomalies got branded for elimination. They moved through the maintenance tunnels like ghosts, Lin Feng's interface providing fragmented guidance. Asterisk turn left at junction. Floor panel loose ahead, avoid, asterisk ventilation shaft access behind false wall. Pull emergency release lever, asterisk, each instruction cost him, draining mental energy until his vision swam with phantom images. Section 4 of Maintenance Tunnel Gamma unfolded before them, a long, sterile corridor lined with glowing blue panels. The air hummed with barely restrained energy. Laser grid, Lin Feng muttered, slipping on the low-light goggles. The world shifted into monochrome clarity, revealing what normal sight couldn't perceive, hundreds of hair-thin crimson beams crisscrossing the corridor from floor to ceiling. Mei Ling activated the prototype motion sensor. The device chirped softly, projecting a holographic map of the grid's pattern. "It's alternating," she said, studying the pulsing lines. 3-second intervals between shifts. Lin Feng's interface flickered, offering another annotation, *grid synchronization flaw at junction box 4C. Overload creates 0.8-second blind spot, *. There, he pointed to a nondescript metal box mounted near the ceiling. "We need to short it out." He handed Mei Ling the stun grenade from his inventory. "On my mark, throw it at the junction box. The EMP burst should disrupt the grid long enough for us to pass. What about you? I'll be right behind you." He counted down silently, watching the laser pattern cycle. 3, 2, 1. Now. Mei Ling hurled the grenade with surprising accuracy. It struck the junction box just as the lasers shifted to their next configuration. A brilliant flash of white light erupted, followed by a crackling wave of electromagnetic energy that made the hair on Lin Feng's arm stand up. The lasers flickered and died. "Go!" Lin Feng shouted, already moving. They sprinted through the corridor, their footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Behind them, the lasers began reactivating one by one, stitching the air back together with deadly light. Control Room Alpha loomed ahead, a massive blast door marked with warning symbols. Lin Feng's interface provided the access code in shimmering text, *override sequence, 7-3-9, Alpha, Omega, *. The door hissed open, revealing a chamber dominated by banks of flickering monitors. Screens showed every corner of the arena, the corpse-strewn plaza, the maintenance tunnels, the observation deck where Zhao Min had watched them. In the center of the room, a cylindrical console pulsed with soft blue light. And there, mounted inconspicuously in ventilation shaft C7, was Zhao Min's gift. The explosive charge was smaller than Lin Feng expected, no larger than his fist, with a complex web of wires connecting it to the ventilation system's main support beam. But the interface's annotation left no doubt about its potency, * thermobaric charge. Yield equivalent to 50 kg TNT. Trigger, vibration sensor, *. It's on a motion trigger, Lin Feng said, approaching carefully. Any significant vibration sets it off. Mei Ling stayed by the door, watching the corridor. "How much time?" "Interface says Li Chen will arrive in 4 minutes. Lin Feng knelt before the charge, his hands steady despite the tremors running through his body. The mental strain of processing continuous spoilers felt like someone driving nails into his skull. But he forced his focus, calling up the interface's disarm instructions. Text scrolled before his eyes, * disarm sequence, cut red wire first, then blue, then green. Warning, order is critical. Reverse sequence triggers immediate detonation, *. He produced a multi-tool scavenged from Armory B, the metal cool against his sweating palm. His hands moved with deliberate precision, following the interface's guidance like a surgeon following anatomical diagrams. First, the red wire. The snipped end sparked briefly before going dark. Next, the blue. The charge emitted a soft whine that made Mei flinch. Finally, the green. Lin Feng held his breath as the wires separated. The charge's status lights shifted from angry crimson to dormant gray. A wave of dizziness hit him so suddenly he nearly collapsed. He caught himself on the console, his vision swimming with afterimages of text and warnings. The interface flickered wildly, annotations bleeding into one another until they became meaningless static. Lin Feng. Mei Ling's voice cut through the fog. He forced his eyes open. On the main monitor, a figure moved through the corridors with predatory grace, Li Chen, his eyes glowing with that unnatural light, his movements too fast, too precise to be human. "He's early," Lin Feng rasped. 2 minutes out. They couldn't face him directly. Even with foreknowledge, Li Chen moved with protagonist-level plot armor that made him nearly unstoppable in direct confrontation. Lin Feng's interface struggled to reboot, offering one last coherent annotation, * weak floor panel near entrance. Structural integrity compromised. Weight threshold, 80 kg, *. An idea crystallized through the pain. Help me with this, he said, moving to the console. His fingers flew across the interface, accessing the arena's architectural schematics. The system resisted at first, security protocols flashing warnings, but Lin Feng bypassed them using access codes the interface provided from some deep cache of spoiler knowledge. He isolated the weak panel's location, then cross-referenced it with the ventilation system's pressure controls. What are you doing? Mei Ling asked. Creating a distraction. He overrode the ventilation controls for Sector 7, directing all airflow to converge on the weak panel's location. The system protested, but Lin Feng pushed through, his interface providing just enough guidance to avoid tripping major alarms. On the monitor, Li Chen approached the final corridor leading to the control room. Now, Lin Feng whispered. He triggered the ventilation surge. In the corridor outside, air pressure spiked suddenly. The weak floor panel, already compromised by arena deterioration and previous structural damage, groaned under the added stress. Then, with a sound like cracking bone, it gave way. Li Chen reacted with impossible speed, leaping backward as the floor collapsed into a yawning pit that revealed machinery levels below. But the distraction had cost him precious seconds. Grab the data. Lin Feng ordered, already downloading everything he could from the console, arena schematics, security system layouts, even fragments of player tracking data. Mei Ling shoved the information into a portable drive scavenged from the control room's equipment locker. They fled through a secondary exit just as the main door hissed open. Lin Feng caught a glimpse of Li Chen standing amidst the dust and debris, his glowing eyes scanning the room with cold, calculating fury. Those eyes paused on the disarmed charge, then tracked to the console where data still streamed from severed connections. For a heartbeat, Lin Feng thought Li Chen might pursue them. But instead, the protagonist turned to the main console, his hands moving with violent purpose. Alarms blared throughout the arena. A system-wide announcement echoed from hidden speakers, emergency protocol activated. Area boss deployment authorized. Lin Feng and Mei Ling ran, their footsteps echoing through maintenance tunnels that suddenly felt like the veins of some waking beast. Behind them, something massive stirred in the deeper levels of the arena, the grinding of metal on metal, the hiss of pressurized hydraulics, a low-frequency vibration that made the walls tremble. They reached a relatively secure storage chamber and barred the door. In the sudden silence, broken only by their ragged breathing, Lin Feng's interface flickered back to life. But something was wrong. The text that appeared wasn't the clean annotations he'd grown accustomed to. It was garbled, corrupted, as if whatever intelligence powered the spoilers was struggling to process new information. Asterisk error, protagonist path divergence detected. Original plot deviation, 37% and increasing. Li Chen was not supposed to activate boss monster until Chapter 8. New variable introduced, rage state triggered by sabotage. Consequence, boss arrives early. Consequence, safe zone predictions invalid. Consequence, system anomaly detection probability rising to 68%. Warning, your actions are fracturing the narrative. Warning, the game masters are watching, asterisk. Then, beneath the warnings, one final line appeared, clear and chilling in its simplicity. Asterisk next spoiler unavailable. Plot 2 unstable. You are on your own now, asterisk. The interface went dark, leaving only the afterimage of those words burning in Lin Feng's vision. Outside their makeshift sanctuary, something roared, a sound of pure, engineered fury that shook dust from the ceiling. The boss monster was awake. And for the first time since transmigrating into this death game, Zhang Wei had no spoilers to guide him. The metallic tang of ozone hung in the air, a bitter reminder of the arena's artificial nature. Lin Feng pressed his back against the cold steel wall of a ventilation shaft, his breathing shallow and controlled. Beside him, Mei Ling's knuckles were white where she gripped her pipe, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and determination. His plot spoiler interface flickered before his eyes, a ghostly overlay on reality that had become both salvation and curse. The text was fragmented, glitching between clarity and static, but one sequence remained stubbornly persistent. Asterisk Xiao Min, Server Room Delta. Movement pattern, Maintenance Corridor B7 Ventilation Access 12 Server Room Entrance. Objective, Hack Game Core via Backdoor. Time, 23 minutes from now, asterisk. He's moving, Lin Feng whispered, the words tasting like ash. Server Room Delta. He's going to try to hack the game's core. Mei Ling's breath hitched. Can he do that? He's a regressor from a sequel, Lin Feng said, his mind racing. He knows things about this system we don't. But my interface is showing me his path. He focused, pushing through the pounding headache that had become his constant companion. More text scrolled, revealing details in cryptic fragments. Asterisk backdoor requires sacrifice of one player's life force. Energy transfer protocol, neural interface at server terminal. Target, any living participant within 10 meters, asterisk. Asterisk warning, regressor combat style utilizes predictive algorithms. Avoid linear movements. Exploit environmental hazards, asterisk. Asterisk server room defenses, automated turrets inactive during hack attempt. Security override possible via terminal access, asterisk. Lin Feng's hands trembled slightly. The interface was giving him everything, too much. Each revelation felt like a nail driven into his skull. He remembered the diary they'd found, the hint about interdimensional broadcasts. Zhao Min wasn't just playing the game, he was trying to rewrite its rules. We have to stop him, Mei Ling said, her voice surprisingly steady. If he hacks the core, he'll control everything, Lin Feng finished. Or worse, crash the entire system while we're still inside. They moved through the ventilation system, following the path his interface had outlined. The arena's architecture was a maze of sterile corridors and hidden passages, all designed for maximum spectacle. Lin Feng could almost feel unseen eyes watching, the game masters observing their every move from whatever dimension they called home. As they approached maintenance corridor B7, Lin Feng signaled for Mei Ling to stop. His interface updated. Asterisk Zhao Min approaching. Current position, 50 meters ahead. Carrying energy dampening device. Weakness, over-reliance on predictive algorithms creates pattern recognition lag of 0.8 seconds, asterisk. 0.8 seconds. A lifetime in combat. Lin Feng's mind worked feverishly, calculating angles, distances, possibilities. He wasn't a fighter, Lin Feng had been an arrogant young master, all bluster and no substance. But Zhang Wei had read enough death game novels to understand one fundamental truth: knowledge was the ultimate weapon. They reached ventilation access 12, a narrow grate overlooking the server room entrance. Below, Zhao Min stood before a massive blast door, his fingers dancing across a holographic keypad. The regressor moved with eerie precision, each motion economical and calculated. He wore simple combat fatigues, but his eyes held centuries of experience. Now, Lin Feng whispered. They dropped from the ventilation shaft, landing in crouches on the polished floor. Zhao Min didn't turn, but his shoulders tensed slightly. I wondered when you'd arrive, Zhao Min said, his voice calm and measured. The anomaly. The variable that shouldn't exist. Lin Feng straightened, his stun grenade held ready. We're not letting you hack the core. Zhao Min finally turned, his expression unreadable. You don't understand what you're interfering with. This game isn't just about survival. It's a cancer spreading across realities. I've seen what happens when the game masters finish their broadcast. His interface flashed. Asterisk Zhao Min preparing attack. First strike, energy blade projected from left palm. Dodge right, then forward. Timing, 3. 2, asterisk. Lin Feng moved as the numbers hit 0. Zhao Min's left hand snapped forward, a shimmering blade of blue energy extending from his palm. It sliced through the air where Lin Feng's head had been, close enough that he felt the heat on his cheek. But Lin Feng was already moving right, then lunging forward as the interface directed. He threw the stun grenade not at Zhao Min, but at the ceiling above him. The flash and concussive blast filled the corridor. Zhao Min staggered, his predictive algorithms momentarily overwhelmed by the unexpected target. Mei! Lin Feng shouted. Mei Ling swung her pipe at Zhao Min's knees. The regressor twisted, avoiding the worst of the blow, but the impact still connected with a sickening crack. He grunted, his calm facade finally cracking. You're reading my movements, Zhao Min said, his eyes narrowing. How? Lin Feng didn't answer. His interface was screaming at him. Asterisk Zhao Min activating emergency protocols. Energy signature spiking. Next attack, spatial distortion field. Counter, disrupt with metallic object through center point, asterisk. Pipe. Lin Feng yelled. Mei Ling threw her pipe just as the air around Zhao Min began to warp and shimmer. The steel bar passed through the distortion center, and the field collapsed with a sound like shattering glass. Zhao Min stumbled back, blood trickling from his nose. Impossible. You shouldn't be able to counter that technique. Not unless. His eyes widened. You have access to the narrative. You're reading the script. The blast door hissed open. Beyond lay server room Delta, a cavernous space filled with humming server racks and flickering holographic displays. At the room's center stood a terminal with a neural interface headset dangling from it. Zhao Min lunged for the door. Lin Feng tackled him, and they crashed into the server room together, rolling across the cold floor. Mei Ling followed, slamming the control panel to close the door behind them. For a moment, all three were still, breathing heavily in the sterile air. Then Zhao Min moved. Faster than before, desperation lending him speed. He reached the terminal, his fingers flying across the controls. Lin Feng's interface updated frantically. Asterisk backdoor activation sequence initiated. Sacrifice protocol engaging. Life force drain will begin in 60 seconds. Target, nearest living participant, asterisk. Asterisk hack countermeasure, input false authorization codes. Sequence, Delta, 7, Theta, 3, Omega, 9. Warning, corrupting backdoor may damage interface connection to plot data, asterisk. He's starting the hack. Lin Feng shouted. He scrambled to his feet, his mind racing. Delta, 7, Theta, 3, Omega, 9. The codes burned themselves into his memory even as part of him screamed not to use them. The interface was warning him, corrupting the backdoor would damage his connection to the spoilers. It would make his cheat less reliable. But if Zhao Min succeeded. Lin Feng reached the terminal just as Zhao Min was lowering the neural interface headset. The regressor's eyes glowed with unnatural light, and the terminal screen showed a progress bar, 15% complete. Don't, Zhao Min said, his voice strained. You don't understand what you'll lose. I understand enough, Lin Feng said. He typed the codes. Delta, 7. The terminal screens flickered. Zhao Min gasped, the glow in his eyes dimming. Theta, 3. Warning sirens blared through the server room. The progress bar reversed, dropping to 5%. Omega, 9. Something in Lin Feng's mind tore. It wasn't pain, not exactly. It was the sensation of pages being ripped from a book, of memories dissolving into static. His plot spoiler interface glitched violently, whole sections of text dissolving into pixelated noise. Future trap locations vanished. Character motives blurred into incomprehensible symbols. The clear, certain knowledge that had been his anchor in this deadly game, fractured. But the backdoor corrupted. The terminal screens went dark, then rebooted with error messages scrolling too fast to read. Zhao Min ripped the neural interface from his head, blood streaming from his nose and ears now. You fool, he whispered, his voice raw. You've damaged the narrative structure itself. Zhao Min staggered back, his body flickering strangely, as if he were a poorly rendered image. He looked at Lin Feng with something that might have been pity. They'll come for you now, Zhao Min said. The game masters don't tolerate anomalies that break their story. He activated a device on his wrist. A portal of swirling light opened behind him. This isn't over, Zhao Min said, his voice already fading as he stepped backward into the light. I'll find another way to crash their system. And when I do, remember you chose their game over our freedom. The portal closed. For a long moment, there was only the hum of servers and the sound of their breathing. Then the system voice echoed through the room, colder and more mechanical than before. Anomalies detected. Narrative integrity compromised. Adjusting parameters. A new message appeared on every screen in the server room, glowing with ominous red text. New rule implemented, game difficulty escalating. Additional threats activated. Elimination priority, all anomalous entities. Lin Feng stared at the words, his mind still reeling from the loss. His interface flickered, showing only fragments now. He could see Mei Ling's worried face, could see the server room around them, but the future had become a blur of static and uncertainty. He had stopped Zhao Min. He had corrupted the backdoor. But as warning lights began to strobe through the arena and distant roars echoed through the ventilation shafts, Lin Feng understood the true cost. He had broken the system's story. And now the system would break him in return. The system announcement echoed through the metallic corridors like a death knell. Game difficulty escalation confirmed. Monster spawn rate increased by 40%. Safe zone contraction acceleration, 200%. Anomalous entities detected, priority targeting protocols activated. Lin Feng leaned against a rusted pipe, the cold metal biting through his torn jacket. Beside him, Mei Ling's breathing came in shallow gasps. Her knuckles were white where she gripped her makeshift pipe weapon, now dented and stained with dark fluids from their previous encounters. "They're coming for us specifically," she whispered, her eyes darting to the flickering emergency lights overhead. Lin Feng didn't need her confirmation. The plot spoiler interface floating in his peripheral vision had been screaming warnings for the past hour. Or rather, it had been screaming contradictory warnings. His cheat, the one thing that had kept him alive through 5 chapters of this nightmare, was fracturing before his eyes. *** safe zone moves east in 17 minutes, follow ventilation shaft gamma, 7***. Warning, ventilation shaft gamma, 7 contains automated turrets, avoid at all costs***. Safe zone moves west, maintenance tunnel theta, 12 provides fastest route***. Theta, 12 collapsed 3 hours ago according to arena schematics***. The annotations flickered, overlapping, sometimes appearing in different colors as if the interface couldn't decide which information was valid. Lin Feng pressed his fingers to his temples, the mental strain manifesting as a throbbing headache that pulsed behind his eyes. He'd been relying on these spoilers since waking up in this death game, using them to avoid traps, scavenge resources, and stay one step ahead of both the overpowered protagonist Li Chen and the regressor Zhao Min. Now the interface was turning against him, offering multiple paths to safety that contradicted each other. "We need to move," Mei Ling said, her voice cutting through his spiraling thoughts. "I can hear something in the distance." Multiple somethings. She was right. The distant screeches of mutated beasts echoed through the metallic corridors, closer than they should have been. The system wasn't just increasing spawn rates, it was directing threats toward them. Lin Feng's interface confirmed it with another flickering annotation. ***3 Hunter-class mutants approaching from Sector 4B, estimated arrival, 4 minutes****. No mutants in Sector 4B, arena logs show all Hunter-class units deployed to Eastern Quadrant***. "Damn it," Lin Feng muttered, pushing off from the pipe. "Follow me." He chose a path based not on the newest spoilers, but on residual knowledge, information he'd absorbed earlier that hadn't yet been corrupted by the glitching interface. The maintenance tunnels they'd used to reach Control Room Alpha, the hidden compartments they'd looted, the trap locations they'd marked on their mental maps. All of it was becoming their primary resource as the interface deteriorated. They moved through dimly lit corridors, their footsteps echoing in the oppressive silence between distant screams and explosions. The arena felt different now, more hostile, more aware. Lin Feng couldn't shake the feeling that the walls themselves were watching, that every security camera they passed was transmitting their movements to unseen observers. "Left here," he whispered, pulling Mei Ling into a narrow service duct just as a patrol of automated turrets rolled past on tracked wheels. The machines scanned the corridor with red laser grids, their barrels rotating slowly as they searched for targets. Mei Ling held her breath until the turrets disappeared around a corner. "How did you know?" "Residual spoiler," Lin Feng said, tapping his temple. "From before the glitching got bad. This duct leads to a hidden bunker, one of the emergency shelters built into the arena's original blueprints. The system probably forgot about it. Or wants us to think it forgot," Mei Ling countered, but she followed him anyway. They crawled through the duct for what felt like hours, the cramped space pressing in on them from all sides. Lin Feng's interface continued its chaotic dance of contradictions, showing annotations about safe paths that immediately contradicted themselves, warnings about threats that didn't exist, and reassurances about security that felt like traps. The mental toll was becoming physical, a tightness in his chest, a buzzing in his ears, and now, a warm trickle from his nose. He wiped at it with the back of his hand, leaving a crimson streak across his skin. Nosebleed. Just like in the outline. The spoilers weren't just glitching, they were actively harming him, overloading his brain with conflicting information. "Lin Feng." Mei Ling's voice held genuine concern. "You're bleeding." "I'm fine," he lied, pushing forward. "Just a little system feedback." They emerged from the duct into a larger maintenance corridor, this one lined with flickering control panels and dormant machinery. According to Lin Feng's residual knowledge, the hidden bunker should be just ahead, behind a false wall panel marked with faded maintenance symbols. That's when the ambush hit. 4 figures dropped from overhead catwalks, landing with practiced grace that spoke of combat experience. They fanned out, blocking both ends of the corridor. The leader was a mountain of a man with arms thicker than Lin Feng's thighs and a face scarred by what looked like energy weapon burns. He carried a makeshift mace constructed from a pipe and a chunk of concrete reinforcement. Well, well, the brute rumbled, his voice like grinding stones. Look what we caught, boys. The anomalies. Lin Feng's interface flickered, trying to provide information. *** Kong, former construction worker, alliance leader, brute strength specialist ***. Warning, Kong's alliance has eliminated 7 players in past 24 hours ***. Kong possesses hidden fear of darkness due to childhood trauma, exploitable weakness ***. The last annotation held for a full second before glitching into nonsense symbols. But it was enough. Kong, right? Lin Feng said, keeping his voice level even as his heart hammered against his ribs. Heard about you. The guy who thinks bigger muscles mean bigger brains. Kong's expression darkened. Cute. You know, the system announced bonus points for eliminating anomalies. Seems you two have been making waves. Mei Ling shifted into a defensive stance, her pipe held ready. We don't want trouble. Too late for that, one of Kong's lackeys sneered, a wiry man with a knife in each hand. You're trouble by existing. Lin Feng's mind raced. 4 against 2, in a confined space, with Kong's brute strength as the primary threat. His interface offered no combat spoilers, just more contradictions about escape routes and attack patterns. But he remembered that one clear annotation, Kong's fear of darkness. His eyes scanned the corridor. Control panels. Machinery. Overhead lighting fixtures. There, a main power regulator panel, its access hatch slightly ajar. If he could reach it. Last chance, Kong said, hefting his mace. Make it quick, and we'll make it painless. Actually, Lin Feng said, taking a step backward, I have a counteroffer. He lunged not at Kong, but toward the wall, his fingers finding the edge of the power regulator panel. Kong roared and charged, his mace swinging in a devastating arc that would have crushed Lin Feng's skull if it connected. But Lin Feng wasn't there anymore. He ducked under the swing, using the momentum to tear open the panel. Wires spilled out, color-coded and humming with energy. His interface flickered again. *** primary lighting circuit, blue and yellow wires ***. *** backup generator feed, red wire, do not cut ***. Emergency blackout protocol, short green and black wires simultaneously ***. The annotations overlapped, contradictory, useless. Lin Feng made a choice based on the one thing he knew for certain, Kong feared darkness. He grabbed 2 wires at random and yanked. The corridor plunged into absolute blackness. For a heartbeat, there was perfect silence. Then Kong screamed, not a battle cry, but a raw, primal sound of terror. No. Lights. Get the lights. Chaos erupted in the darkness. Kong's lackeys stumbled into each other, cursing. Mei Ling moved with purpose, her pipe connecting with something solid, a sickening crunch followed by a groan. Lin Feng grabbed her arm, pulling her toward where he remembered the false wall panel being. This way, he hissed. They stumbled through the darkness, guided by memory and desperation. Lin Feng's fingers found the maintenance symbols, traced the edges of the panel, found the hidden latch. It clicked open, revealing a narrow passage beyond. They slipped inside just as emergency backup lights flickered to life in the corridor behind them, casting long, distorted shadows. Kong was on his knees, breathing heavily, his mace forgotten beside him. His lackeys were either unconscious or regrouping, but none pursued as Lin Feng sealed the hidden entrance behind them. The passage led downward, into the earth beneath the arena. The air grew cooler, damper. After 50 meters, it opened into a space that made both of them stop and stare. The hidden bunker was larger than Lin Feng had expected, a circular chamber about 20 meters across, lined with old-fashioned control consoles and monitoring equipment. Dust covered every surface, but the screens glowed with soft blue light, showing. What is this? Mei Ling whispered, approaching one of the monitors. Lin Feng joined her, his nosebleed forgotten. The screen showed a feed from somewhere in the arena, a group of players fighting mutated beasts in what looked like a manufacturing plant. But overlaid on the feed were symbols he didn't recognize, scrolling text in alien languages, and viewer counts. Dimension 7XP, 4.2 million viewers. Reality Cluster Theta, 8.7 million viewers. Chrono Stream, 12.4 million viewers and rising. He moved to another monitor. This one showed Li Chen battling through a horde of monsters, his glowing eyes leaving trails of light in the darkness. The viewer counts here were even higher, with flashing icons indicating premium subscribers and donation goals met. A third monitor showed Zhao Min moving through server rooms, his expression calculating as he bypassed security systems. The annotations here were different: technical readouts, system access logs, and a single line that made Lin Feng's blood run cold. Regressor anomaly confirmed, entertainment value, exceptional. They're watching, Mei Ling said, her voice hollow. All of them. This whole thing, it's really just a show. Lin Feng's interface chose that moment to glitch more violently than ever before. The annotations didn't just contradict each other, they fractured, splintering into dozens of overlapping text boxes that filled his vision. Asterisk asterisk narrative integrity at 67% asterisk asterisk. Asterisk asterisk plot deviation exceeding acceptable parameters asterisk asterisk. Asterisk asterisk protagonist path divergence, 42% asterisk asterisk. Asterisk asterisk regressor timeline contamination, severe asterisk asterisk. Asterisk asterisk anomaly detection probability, 89% and rising asterisk asterisk. And then, clear amidst the chaos, in bold crimson text that pulsed like a heartbeat. Asterisk asterisk narrative integrity at 67%, break it to survive asterisk asterisk. The words hung in his vision, unchanging even as other annotations flickered and died around them. Break the narrative. Not avoid it, not navigate it, not outsmart it. Break it. Lin Feng looked at Mei Ling, then at the monitors showing countless dimensions watching their every move. He thought about Kong's terror in the darkness, about Li Chen's rage when sabotaged, about Zhao Min's cold calculations. He thought about the system escalating difficulty specifically because of them. They want a story, he said quietly. A predictable narrative with heroes and villains and dramatic deaths. Mei Ling met his gaze. And we're not following the script. No, Lin Feng agreed, a slow smile spreading across his face despite the blood drying on his upper lip. We're not. And I think it's time we stop trying to. He reached out, his fingers hovering over one of the control consoles. The interface's final message pulsed in his vision, a directive and a warning all in one. Break it to survive. Somewhere above them, in the arena proper, alarms began to sound. The metallic scent of ozone hung thick in the air of the hidden bunker, mingling with the coppery tang of blood still drying beneath Lin Feng's nose. On the monitors before them, interdimensional viewers flickered in and out of existence, faceless silhouettes against cosmic backgrounds, their laughter and applause reduced to static whispers through damaged speakers. Mei Ling's fingers trembled as she traced the edge of a monitor showing a betting interface where odds shifted in real time. Player number 47, anomaly detected, odds of survival, 12%. That was him. Lin Feng stared at his plot spoiler interface, which floated in his vision like a cracked mirror. The usual cryptic annotations had dissolved into chaotic fragments, asterisk Li Chen will, asterisk, overlapped with, asterisk Zhao Min has already, asterisk, while, asterisk safe zone contraction in, asterisk, bled into nonsensical symbols. A fresh wave of dizziness washed over him, his temples throbbing with the strain of parsing contradictory information. The interface's final clear message burned behind his eyes, narrative integrity at 67%, break it to survive. We can't just hide, Lin Feng said, his voice raspy from fatigue. He wiped blood from his upper lip, the stain dark against his pale skin. The system is adapting. My spoilers are becoming useless noise. If we wait, we'll be cornered. Mei Ling turned from the monitors, her eyes wide with a fear that had hardened into resolve over the past hours. What do you propose? Sabotage more control rooms? Hack another server? No, Lin Feng's gaze fixed on a flickering annotation that momentarily stabilized, asterisk bridge collapse in chapter 8 kills 10 players, asterisk, the words glowed with a sickly green hue, unlike the usual blue text. We break the story itself. If the plot says something happens later, we make it happen now. We create chaos the system can't anticipate. He explained the plan as they moved, his words punctuated by distant explosions and the guttural roars of mutated beasts patrolling the arena's eastern sector. The bridge in question spanned a deep chasm between the industrial zone and the residential sector, a narrow, rusted structure of girders and grating that, according to the spoiler, would give way under the weight of fleeing players during the next safe zone contraction. 10 lives snuffed out in an instant, all to streamline the narrative for the viewer's entertainment. We trigger it early, Lin Feng said, his breath fogging in the chill air of a maintenance tunnel. Before players gather. We collapse it now. Mei Ling's hesitation was palpable. But, won't that just kill different people? Or no one at all. That's the point, Lin Feng replied, his mind racing through the implications. The plot expects a specific death toll at a specific time. By changing when it happens, we reduce the player count faster than intended. We create a statistical anomaly. And look, he pointed to another spoiler fragment, Li Chen's route crosses bridge at 18:32, if we collapse it now, we divert him. Force him to take a longer path. Every second we delay the protagonist is a second we gain. They reached the chasm's edge as the arena's artificial sky dimmed toward evening, casting long shadows across the rusted metal landscape. The bridge loomed before them, a skeletal structure groaning in the wind, its supports eaten away by corrosion and neglect. Below, a drop of at least 50 meters vanished into darkness, punctuated by the occasional spark of malfunctioning machinery. Lin Feng's interface flickered, showing schematics of the bridge's weak points, primary stress fractures at support columns C, 7 and D, 3, the information was clear, unnervingly so, as if the interface itself was encouraging this deviation. Here, Lin Feng whispered, guiding Mei Ling to a service ladder that descended along the chasm wall. We need to plant charges at the bases. I still have that stun grenade from Armory B, we can rig it with scrap metal to amplify the blast. Mei Ling nodded, her movements precise as she scavenged wiring from a nearby control panel. Her hands, once trembling, now worked with a mechanic's certainty. I can bypass the safety protocols on these old conduits, she said, her voice steady. Use the power surge to weaken the metal before detonation. As they worked, Lin Feng's interface continued to glitch, showing flashes of what might have been, player number 12 falls screaming, Li Chen leaps across gap, system recalculates, each vision brought a fresh spike of pain behind his eyes, but he pushed through, focusing on the physical task of wrapping explosives around the bridge's crumbling supports. The wind howled through the chasm, carrying with it the distant sounds of combat, energy blasts and screams that echoed like ghosts. Ready? Mei Ling asked, her face smudged with grease and dust. Lin Feng took a deep breath, his fingers hovering over the makeshift detonator. For a moment, he hesitated, wondering if this made him no better than the game masters, orchestrating destruction for survival. Then he remembered the monitors, the viewers betting on his death, the system that had turned human lives into entertainment. He pressed the trigger. The explosion was deafening, a roar of tearing metal and shattering concrete that echoed across the arena. Support column C, 7 buckled first, twisting like a broken bone, followed by D, 3 shearing off in a shower of sparks. The bridge groaned, a dying beast, before collapsing inward, its central span plunging into the abyss in a cascade of debris. The sound of impact, a thunderous crash, reverberated through the ground beneath their feet. Lin Feng's interface lit up with a cascade of notifications. Player count reduced by early collapse, 92 remaining, Li Chen's route diverted, estimated delay, 23 minutes, narrative deviation successful, rewards, enhanced spoiler clarity for 1 hour, For the first time in days, the pain in his head receded. The chaotic fragments coalesced into clear, coherent annotations, glowing with a steady golden light. It was a temporary reprieve, but it felt like gulping clean air after drowning in static. It worked, Mei Ling breathed, her eyes wide with awe and horror as she watched the last of the bridge vanish into darkness. Now we use it, Lin Feng said, already scanning the enhanced interface. New spoilers appeared, detailed and precise, weapons cache hidden beneath collapsed warehouse in Sector 9, G, contains plasma rifles, armor-piercing rounds, and medical supplies, access via drainage pipe obscured by holographic debris, They moved quickly, navigating the arena's ruined landscape with renewed purpose. The enhanced spoilers guided them around patrols of robotic sentries and through hidden passages Lin Feng had never noticed before. Every step felt calculated, every turn preordained, but this time, he was the one writing the script. They reached Sector 9G, a district of shattered warehouses left over from the arena's pre-game industrial design. True to the spoiler, a holographic projection of intact walls flickered over a pile of rubble, masking a rusted drainage pipe large enough to crawl through. Inside, the cache was a treasure trove, racked plasma rifles gleamed under emergency lighting, crates of ammunition were stacked neatly, and a refrigerated unit held medkits and stimulants. Lin Feng's fingers closed around the grip of a rifle, its weight familiar from a life he'd almost forgotten. Zhang Wei had never fired a gun, but Lin Feng's muscle memory, the original Lin Feng's arrogance extending to combat training, kicked in. He loaded a power cell, the hum of the weapon coming to life vibrating through his palms. "This changes everything," Mei Ling said, stuffing medkits into her pack. "We can actually fight back." But as Lin Feng slung a rifle over his shoulder, his interface flickered. The golden clarity began to dim, the hour of enhanced spoilers ticking away too fast. A new warning appeared, pulsing red, *anomaly detection spike, game masters alerted, *, recommend immediate evacuation, *. They burst from the drainage pipe just as the arena's speakers crackled to life, the system's voice devoid of its usual artificial cheer, anomalous entity detected. Player number 47, designation Lin Feng. You have been flagged for narrative disruption. Enforcement protocol initiated. The air around them grew heavy, charged with static electricity. From a shimmer in the atmosphere, a figure materialized, taller than a man, built of polished black metal and glowing crimson joints. Its face was a smooth, featureless oval save for a single lens that scanned the area with a beam of harsh light. Robotic Enforcer, the interface applied, along with a flood of data, Model X7, armed with repulsor cannons and neural disruptors, *, primary function, eliminate anomalies to restore plot coherence, *, weak to electromagnetic pulses, *. The Enforcer's lens fixed on Lin Feng, and a synthesized voice echoed from its chassis, target acquired. Commencing purification. It raised an arm, the repulsor cannon charging with a whine that climbed into ultrasonic registers. Lin Feng shoved Mei Ling behind a chunk of collapsed wall as the first blast tore through the space where they'd stood, vaporizing concrete and leaving a smoldering crater. Heat washed over them, searing the air in their lungs. "We can't outrun it." Mei Ling shouted over the din of another blast. Lin Feng's mind raced, the interface's final clear spoiler burning in his vision, Enforcer weak to electromagnetic pulses, *. He glanced at the plasma rifle in his hands, then at the warehouse's exposed power conduits nearby. An idea formed, desperate, reckless, and perfectly aligned with breaking the narrative. "Draw its fire," he yelled to Mei Ling. "I need 30 seconds. She didn't hesitate, darting from cover with a burst of speed, hurling a chunk of debris to draw the Enforcer's attention. Its lens tracked her, repulsor blast stitching the ground at her heels. Lin Feng lunged for the power conduits, his fingers tearing at frayed insulation. The interface guided him, showing which wires to cross, which circuits to overload. He jammed the plasma rifle's power cell into the junction box, rigging it as a makeshift EMP generator. The Enforcer turned back to him, its cannon glowing white-hot. Anomaly elimination imminent. Lin Feng met its lens with a grim smile. "You first." He slammed the wires together. A surge of electricity arced through the rifle, overloading it in a burst of blue-white light that expanded outward in a silent wave. The electromagnetic pulse hit the Enforcer like a physical blow, its glowing joints flickered, its repulsor cannon sputtered and died, and its smooth chassis shuddered as systems short-circuited. For a moment, it stood frozen, a statue of failing technology. Then it collapsed, hitting the ground with a crash that echoed through the silent sector. Lin Feng sank to his knees, breath ragged, the plasma rifle now a melted ruin in his hands. The enhanced spoilers vanished from his interface, leaving only the familiar, glitching fragments. But one new message appeared, glowing with ominous certainty, narrative integrity at 59%. Game master's attention, confirmed, prepare for escalation, In the distance, the arena's lights flickered, and a new sound began, the deep, resonant hum of something massive powering up. The system was not done with them yet. The robotic Enforcer lay twitching on the floor of Sector 9G, its metallic limbs sparking with residual electromagnetic discharge. Lin Feng, Zhang Wei in all but name, leaned against the wall, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The plasma rifle in his hand still hummed with the afterglow of the makeshift EMP blast, the air smelling of ozone and scorched circuitry. Mei Ling crouched beside him, her hands trembling as she checked his condition. "Your nose is bleeding again," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the distant screams echoing through the arena's ventilation shafts. Lin Feng wiped the crimson streak with the back of his hand, the metallic taste of blood sharp on his tongue. His head throbbed with the familiar, agonizing pressure of contradictory information, the plot spoiler interface flickering behind his eyes like a damaged hologram. One moment it showed him the Enforcer's weak point, EMP vulnerability in thoracic core, activate within 3.2 seconds of power surge. The next, it screamed warnings that didn't match reality, Enforcer prototype model, immune to electromagnetic pulses, seek alternative, error, contradiction detected. He'd gambled on the first spoiler, rigging the plasma rifle to overload its power cell into a localized EMP burst. The gamble had paid off, but the mental strain left him feeling hollowed out, as if someone had scooped out his thoughts with a rusty spoon. "We need to move," Mei Ling said, her eyes darting to the corridor beyond the weapons cache. "That explosion will draw every player in this sector." Lin Feng nodded, pushing himself upright. The enhanced spoiler clarity he'd earned from collapsing the bridge early was fading fast, leaving behind the usual garbled mess of half-truths and contradictions. But one annotation remained stubbornly clear, glowing with urgent crimson text: Game Master's monitoring anomaly, secondary enforcer deployment in 4 minutes, Lab Gamma 12 contains portable EMP device, coordinates, 39.7 N, 12.3 E. "There's a lab," he rasped, the words tasting like ash. "Gamma 12. Portable EMP device. We have 4 minutes before they send another one." Mei Ling didn't question him anymore, not after the bridge, not after the server room, not after 7 chapters of surviving what should have been certain death. She simply slung one of the plasma rifles from the cache over her shoulder, the weight making her stagger slightly. Lin Feng took the other, along with a medical kit he stuffed into his makeshift pack. They moved through the sterile corridors of Sector 9, the white walls stained with blood and scorch marks from earlier skirmishes. Lin Feng's interface flickered with warnings about traps that no longer existed, pressure plates that had already been triggered, laser grids that had shorted out, turrets that other players had dismantled for parts. The death game was evolving beyond its original programming, and his spoilers were becoming relics of a story that was being rewritten in real time. Lab Gamma 12 was exactly where the spoiler said it would be, a sealed chamber with reinforced doors that hissed open at Lin Feng's touch on the access panel. The room beyond was a mess of overturned equipment and shattered glass, as if someone had ransacked it in a hurry. But in the center of the chaos sat a sleek metallic cylinder about the size of a thermos, glowing with soft blue light. Portable EMP generator, single use, range, 15 meters, activation code, 7-3-9-1, the interface displayed, the text mercifully clear for once. Lin Feng snatched the device just as the entire corridor outside shuddered with heavy, mechanical footsteps. Through the lab's observation window, he saw it, a second enforcer, larger than the first, its chassis gleaming with fresh armor plating. This one moved with predatory grace, its optical sensors scanning the area with methodical precision. "It's adapting," Mei Ling breathed, pressing herself against the wall. "Look at its joints, reinforced shielding. Your EMP might not work on this one." Lin Feng's interface confirmed her fear with a burst of contradictory data. Enforcer Mark II, EMP shielding rated for 500 kilojoules, versus, weak point, power coupling between thoracic plates, susceptible to electromagnetic interference. The conflicting information made his vision swim, fresh blood trickling from his left nostril. He made a decision in that moment, not based on the spoilers, but on something deeper, something that felt like the ghost of Zhang Wei's analytical mind merging with Lin Feng's desperation. "We don't use it on the enforcer," he said, his voice steady despite the pain. "We use it on the arena's power grid. Lab Gamma 12 is a secondary control node, I can see the conduits in the ceiling." Mei Ling's eyes widened. "You want to black out the entire sector?" "I want to do more than that." Lin Feng's fingers danced across the portable EMP device, inputting the activation code. "The interface showed me something while we were running. The Game Masters, they're not just system administrators. They're interdimensional entities. This whole death game is live-streamed entertainment for them. Our suffering is their content." The revelation hung in the air between them, ugly and undeniable. Mei Ling's face paled. "The monitors in the bunker." "Exactly." Lin Feng attached the EMP device to a power conduit running along the lab's ceiling. "They're farming our pain for views. And the system rewards narrative disruption because it makes better television. That's why my spoilers work, I'm not cheating the game. I'm improving the ratings." Outside, the enforcer's heavy footsteps grew closer. It had detected their heat signatures. Lin Feng made another choice, one that cost him dearly. He focused on the last remnants of his enhanced spoiler clarity, the 1-hour window that had already begun fading. Instead of using it to find escape routes or hidden caches, he directed it toward the arena's communication network. The interface responded with a flood of data about hacked comm frequencies, player locations, and, most importantly, evidence caches scattered throughout the game zone. Server Room Alpha, backup logs of viewer metrics, one spoiler revealed. Medical Bay 3, neural interface records showing forced emotional amplification, showed another. Observation Deck 7, recording of Game Masters discussing player entertainment value. Mei Ling, Lin Feng said, his voice tight with strain. I need you to do something for me. There are evidence caches, proof of what this game really is. I'm going to broadcast their locations to every player still alive. You'll expose yourself, she protested. The Game Masters will. They already know I'm an anomaly. But if every player knows the truth. Lin Feng's smile was grim. That's not just breaking the narrative. That's shattering it. He sacrificed the last of his enhanced clarity in that moment, pouring the mental energy into hacking the arena's communication system. The interface screamed in protest, warnings flashing about, system integrity breach, and anomaly quarantine protocols. But Lin Feng pushed through, his nose bleeding freely now, the blood dripping onto the floor in fat, crimson drops. The portable EMP device hummed to life, its blue glow intensifying. Outside, the enforcer raised its arm-mounted plasma cannon, targeting the lab door. Now! Lin Feng shouted. Mei Ling slammed her palm against the EMP's activation switch. The world went silent first, a profound, absolute quiet as every electronic device in a 15-meter radius died. Then the lights failed, plunging Sector 9 into darkness broken only by emergency strips along the floor. The enforcer outside staggered, its systems momentarily disrupted by the electromagnetic pulse. But Lin Feng wasn't done. Through the hacked comms, using a frequency he'd ripped from the interface's dying clarity, he broadcast a message to every player's communication device, every arena speaker, every working monitor. This is Lin Feng. The safe zone is a lie. The monsters are programmed. The Game Masters are interdimensional entities watching us die for entertainment. Evidence caches at Server Room Alpha, Medical Bay 3, Observation Deck 7. They're farming our suffering. Break their narrative. Survive together. He repeated it 3 times, his voice growing weaker with each transmission. Then the strain became too much. Lin Feng collapsed to his knees, the world spinning around him. The plot spoiler interface flickered wildly behind his eyes, showing garbage data, random words, mathematical equations, fragments of languages he didn't recognize. The connection to plot spoilers was damaged beyond repair, leaving only glitches and noise. Mei Ling caught him before he hit the floor. You did it, she whispered, her voice filled with awe and terror. Listen. From somewhere deep in the arena, a shout echoed, then another, and another. Players were reacting to the broadcast. Distant explosions sounded, not from monsters or traps, but from deliberate sabotage. The Death Game's carefully orchestrated chaos was turning into genuine rebellion. They stumbled out of Lab Gamma 12, leaving the disabled EMP device behind. The Enforcer was rebooting slowly, its systems cycling back online with painful slowness. They had minutes at most. But as they reached a junction between sectors, a figure stepped from the shadows. Lin Feng recognized him immediately, the glowing predatory eyes, the confident stance, the aura of someone who believed himself destined to win. Li Chen. The protagonist's plasma rifle was pointed directly at Lin Feng's chest. You, Li Chen said, his voice cold with accusation. You're the one broadcasting lies. You're the one collapsing bridges early, sabotaging systems, making the game unstable. Lin Feng tried to raise his own weapon, but his arms felt like lead. The mental exhaustion from sacrificing his enhanced clarity was complete, leaving him barely able to stand. It's not lies, Mei Ling said, stepping between them. We have proof. Proof. Li Chen's laugh was humorless. The only proof I need is that you're still alive. A trash young master like Lin Feng should have died in the opening minutes. Yet here you are, surviving impossible odds, knowing things you shouldn't, cheating the system. Lin Feng met Li Chen's gaze, seeing not just anger there, but something else, confusion. The protagonist's fate had diverged from the original plot, and he didn't understand why. The bridge collapse had diverted his route. The early monster spawns had forced him into defensive positions. The narrative was fracturing around him, and he was looking for someone to blame. Behind Lin Feng's eyes, the glitching plot spoiler interface managed one last, coherent message. The text flickered weakly, barely visible through the static. Asterisk protagonist's trust broken, new path, ally or enemy, asterisk. Then the interface went dark entirely, leaving only silence and the cold certainty of Li Chen's finger on the trigger. The air in the arena tasted of ozone and desperation. Zhang Wei leaned against the cold metal wall of the ventilation shaft, his breathing ragged. Beside him, Mei Ling clutched the plasma rifle they'd scavenged from Sector 9G, her knuckles white. Below them, chaos reigned. Through the grates, they watched players turning on the system. A group had barricaded themselves in what was once a kill zone, using turrets they'd disabled to fire at the robotic enforcers that patrolled the upper levels. Screams echoed through the metallic corridors, some of pain, some of defiance. The rebellion he'd sparked with his broadcast was spreading like wildfire, but Zhang Wei knew fire could burn both ways. His head throbbed with the aftermath of sacrificing his enhanced spoiler clarity. The plot spoiler interface remained dark, a silent void in his consciousness that felt more terrifying than any glitch. For the first time since transmigrating into this death game, he was truly blind. "We can't stay here," Mei Ling whispered, her voice trembling. "The enforcers are sweeping sector by sector." Zhang Wei nodded, pushing himself upright. His body felt heavy, every movement requiring conscious effort. "We need to move toward the central hub. If the players are rebelling, that's where they'll gather." They crawled through the ventilation system, the metal groaning under their weight. Zhang Wei remembered the layout from earlier spoilers, hidden paths that bypassed the main corridors. His knowledge was becoming memory now, no longer illuminated by the interface's annotations. He had to rely on what he'd already seen, what he'd already learned. They emerged into a service corridor littered with debris. A monitor on the wall flickered, showing a live feed of the arena. The player count had dropped to 87. Zhang Wei's eyes narrowed. Too fast. The system was escalating again. A shadow moved at the end of the corridor. Zhang Wei pushed Mei Ling behind a support column just as a plasma bolt seared past them, melting the wall where his head had been. He recognized the glowing predatory eyes before he saw the rest of the figure. Li Chen stepped into the dim light, his expression unreadable. He held a modified plasma rifle that hummed with energy, its barrel still smoking from the warning shot. "You," Li Chen said, his voice flat. "The cheater who broke the game." Zhang Wei raised his hands slowly, his mind racing. Without the interface, he had no spoilers about this confrontation. No annotations warning him of Li Chen's next move. He was operating on pure instinct now. "I didn't cheat," Zhang Wei said, keeping his voice steady. "I just told the truth." "The truth?" Li Chen's laugh was bitter. "You revealed cache locations. You told everyone about the viewers. Now they're dying faster because they're fighting the system instead of surviving it." "They were dying anyway," Mei Ling shouted from behind the column. "The game masters were farming us like cattle." Li Chen's eyes flickered toward her, then back to Zhang Wei. "And what are you farming, Lin Feng? What's your angle?" This was the moment. Zhang Wei remembered the exclusive outlines directive, negotiate a temporary alliance. But how? Without spoilers, he had nothing to offer except. Wait. The interface flickered. Just for a second, a ghost of light in his peripheral vision. Then words appeared, fragmented and corrupted. Asterisk Xiao Min. Reactor core, plans to overload, asterisk. The text dissolved into static, but it was enough. Zhang Wei's heart hammered against his ribs. The interface wasn't completely dead, just damaged. And it had given him exactly what he needed. "I know where Xiao Min is," Zhang Wei said, meeting Li Chen's gaze. "And I know what he's planning." Li Chen's finger tightened on the trigger. "Why should I believe you?" "Because if I'm lying, you can kill me right here." Zhang Wei took a step forward, ignoring the way his legs threatened to buckle. "But if I'm telling the truth, and Xiao Min succeeds in whatever he's planning, we all die. You included." For a long moment, Li Chen didn't move. The plasma rifle remained aimed at Zhang Wei's chest. Then, slowly, he lowered the weapon. "Talk." "He's in the reactor core," Zhang Wei said, the words tasting like ash. "He's going to overload it." The interface flickered again, showing corrupted annotations about security traps in the reactor access tunnels. Zhang Wei pushed through the mental fog, forcing himself to remember the details before they faded. "I can get us past the security. But we need to move now." Li Chen studied him, those glowing eyes seeming to pierce through to his very soul. "Why help me? After everything?" "Because Xiao Min isn't just another player," Zhang Wei said. "He's a regressor from a sequel. He knows things about this game that even the system doesn't. And if he overloads that reactor..." He let the implication hang in the air. Li Chen nodded once. "Lead the way." The journey to the reactor core was a tense, silent affair. Zhang Wei navigated through service tunnels and maintenance shafts, his memory of the arena's layout guiding them. The interface flickered occasionally, showing glimpses of traps ahead, pressure plates that would trigger turrets, motion sensors that would seal corridors. Each time, Zhang Wei directed them around the danger. But the annotations were becoming more corrupted. Text scrambled into gibberish. Timestamps inverted. Warnings about threats that didn't exist mixed with silence about dangers that did. They reached the reinforced blast doors leading to the reactor access tunnel. Zhang Wei placed his hand against the control panel, remembering a spoiler from what felt like a lifetime ago, security override code, 7-3-9-1 alpha. He entered the sequence. The doors hissed open. Beyond lay a long corridor lined with dormant security systems. The interface flickered, showing annotations about laser grids and sonic emitters. Zhang Wei pointed to specific panels on the walls. Disable those. They'll activate when we're halfway through. Li Chen moved with lethal efficiency, using the butt of his rifle to smash the control nodes. Mei Ling followed, her movements careful but determined. They worked their way down the corridor, Zhang Wei calling out each trap location as the interface revealed them. They were 3/4 of the way through when the interface glitched. A wave of static washed through Zhang Wei's mind, so violent he stumbled. The annotations vanished, replaced by screaming white noise. He clutched his head, blood trickling from his nose. Lin Feng. Mei Ling rushed to his side. Keep going, he gasped. I'm fine. But he wasn't fine. The interface had missed something. He could feel the gap in his knowledge like a missing tooth. They took another step forward. The laser grid activated without warning. A lattice of crimson light materialized across the corridor, slicing through the air with a high-pitched whine. Mei Ling screamed as one of the beams grazed her arm, searing through her sleeve and into flesh. The smell of burnt fabric and skin filled the air. Li Chen reacted instantly, firing his plasma rifle at the emitter on the ceiling. The weapon overheated, its energy discharge overloading the laser system. The grid flickered and died. Zhang Wei caught Mei Ling as she collapsed. Her arm was a mess of charred tissue and blood. Her breathing came in shallow gasps. I'm sorry, he whispered, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry. The interface flickered back to life, but different now. Corrupted. It showed him annotations for medkits in nearby storage lockers, but the text was bleeding, letters running together into incomprehensible symbols. He could still parse the meaning, but it hurt, like trying to read through shattered glass. There are medical supplies, Zhang Wei said, his voice tight with pain. 2 corridors over. Storage locker Gamma, 7. Li Chen looked from Mei Ling's wound to Zhang Wei's bleeding nose. You're burning yourself out. I don't have a choice. They carried Mei Ling to the storage area. Zhang Wei used the last of his clear spoiler knowledge to bypass the biometric lock, his hands shaking as he entered another override code. The locker opened, revealing rows of medkits and emergency supplies. He grabbed a regeneration injector and pressed it against Mei Ling's neck. The nanites flooded her system, beginning the slow process of repairing damaged tissue. Her breathing steadied. As he tended to her, Zhang Wei felt something in his mind tear. The interface showed him a future annotation about Zhao Min's next move, but the text was permanently corrupted now, blackened and unreadable. The cost of pushing through the glitch had been permanent damage to his cheat system. We need to keep moving, Li Chen said, watching the corridor behind them. If Zhao Min's really overloading the reactor. Zhang Wei helped Mei Ling to her feet. She leaned against him, her face pale but determined. I can walk. They reached the final blast door leading to the reactor core. Through the reinforced viewport, they could see Zhao Min standing before the main control console. His hands moved across the interface with practiced efficiency, bypassing safety protocols with codes that shouldn't exist in this timeline. The reactor hummed with building energy, its core glowing brighter with each passing second. Warning lights flashed crimson across the chamber. Zhao Min turned, as if sensing their presence. Through the viewport, his eyes met Zhang Wei's. He smiled, a cold, knowing expression that spoke of timelines seen and reset survived. Then he pressed the final sequence. Alarms shrieked through the entire arena. The reactor's hum became a roar. The core's glow intensified from blue-white to blinding incandescence. Zhang Wei's interface flickered one last time, showing a single, clear annotation. Asterisk reactor meltdown in 10 minutes, original plot, Li Chen stops it, but now, asterisk. The question hung in the air, unanswered. The reactor core pulsed with apocalyptic energy. Zhao Min's smile widened. And the countdown began. The reactor core pulsed with a sickly green light, casting long shadows across the metallic catwalks. Zhang Wei could feel the heat through the soles of his boots, not just physical warmth, but the searing energy of impending catastrophe. The countdown display glowed crimson, 9:47, 9:46, 9:45. Zhao Min stood before the central console, her fingers dancing across holographic controls with practiced precision. She didn't even glance at them as they entered. "You're too late," she said, her voice echoing in the cavernous space. "The overload sequence is irreversible through conventional means. In 5 minutes, the containment fields will fail. In 10, this entire sector becomes a crater." Li Chen stepped forward, his glowing predatory eyes narrowing. "There's always a shutdown protocol." "Not one you can access," Zhao Min replied, finally turning. Her expression was calm, almost serene. "The codes are buried in the system's deepest archives. By the time you brute force your way in, we'll all be atoms." Zhang Wei's head throbbed. His plot spoiler interface flickered in his vision, not the crisp annotations he'd grown accustomed to, but fragmented text swimming in static. He could still make out fragments: data terminal, sector 7B, administrative override, but the coordinates were scrambled, the details corrupted by his earlier sacrifices. Mei Ling leaned against a support beam, her breathing shallow but steady. The emergency medkit had stabilized her laser wound, but she was pale, sweat beading on her forehead. "Lin Feng," she whispered. "Your interface." "I know." Zhang Wei closed his eyes, forcing himself to focus. The mental exhaustion was a physical weight, pressing against his temples, making every thought feel like wading through mud. But beneath the static, one annotation remained clear, crystal clear, preserved like a final gift before the darkness. Asterisk primary shutdown code stored in data terminal Delta 9. Location, sublevel maintenance corridor, 300 meters northeast of reactor core. Access requires administrative credentials from fallen enforcer units. Warning, accessing terminal corrupt spoiler database, irreversible, asterisk. Zhang Wei's breath caught. Irreversible. Not just temporary exhaustion, not just scrambled future events. Permanent corruption. Losing his cheat entirely. Li Chen was already moving, scanning the reactor room. There has to be another way. Emergency vents, secondary cooling. Disabled, Zhao Min said. "I've played this game before, remember? In the sequel, this reactor meltdown wipes out 40% of remaining players. I'm just accelerating the timeline." 8:32. Zhang Wei made his decision. "Li Chen," he said, his voice surprisingly steady. "I need you to create a diversion. Draw her attention, keep her away from the consoles for 3 minutes." Li Chen's eyes flicked to him. "You have a plan?" "The shutdown codes are in data terminal Delta 9. Sub-level maintenance corridor, northeast sector." "How do you," Li Chen began, then stopped. His expression shifted from suspicion to something colder, more calculating. "Your cheat. The one you've been using this whole time." Zhang Wei nodded. "This is the last clear piece of information I have. After this." He didn't finish the sentence. 7:15. "Do it," Mei Ling said, pushing herself upright. "I'll cover you." Li Chen didn't waste time arguing. He moved with the predatory grace that had made him the protagonist, not a sprint, but a controlled explosion of motion. Plasma rifle raised, he fired 3 shots at the console beside Zhao Min, not aiming to hit her, but to force her back. Zhao Min ducked, her regressor instincts kicking in. She pulled a sidearm from her hip, a compact energy pistol Zhang Wei recognized from the original novel's later chapters, and returned fire. Bolts of blue energy sizzled through the air, forcing Li Chen to take cover behind a coolant tank. Zhang Wei didn't watch the firefight. He was already moving, slipping through a service hatch Mei Ling had pried open moments earlier. The maintenance corridor beyond was narrow, lit by flickering emergency strips. Pipes groaned overhead, vibrating with the reactor's building energy. His interface flickered again. Corruption threshold at 87%, database integrity failing, the words bled into static, then reformed. Terminal ahead, 30 meters, enforcer credentials required. He ran, his boots clanging on metal grates. The heat grew more intense with every step. Sweat soaked through his scavenged combat vest. He could hear the distant sounds of battle, the crackle of energy weapons, the shriek of metal on metal as Li Chen and Zhao Min fought. Data Terminal Delta 9 was exactly where the spoiler had indicated, a recessed console at the corridor's end, its screen dark. Zhang Wei approached, his heart hammering against his ribs. He fumbled in his pack, pulling out the portable EMP device they'd used against the enforcers. Taped to its side were 2 access cards scavenged from the disabled robotic units, administrative credentials. 603. He slid the first card. The terminal remained dark. The second. Nothing. Panic clawed at his throat. Had he misinterpreted the spoiler? Had the corruption already begun? Then he remembered, the original novel's technobabble. He pressed both cards against the reader simultaneously, holding them at crossed angles. The terminal beeped, once, twice, and the screen flickered to life. A login prompt appeared. Zhang Wei's fingers flew across the keyboard, inputting the override codes he'd memorized from an early chapter, codes meant for a completely different system, but which the spoiler had indicated would work here due to lazy programming by the game masters. Access granted. The screen filled with scrolling data. Schematics of the reactor core. Energy reading spiking into the red. And there, buried 3 submenus deep, primary shutdown sequence. Activation codes, Alpha, 7, Beta, 9, Gamma, 3. 518. Zhang Wei reached for the transmit button, and froze. His interface exploded in his vision. Not text this time, but sensation, a searing pain behind his eyes, as if something were being torn from his mind. The annotations he'd relied on, the future glimpses, the hidden paths, they unraveled like burning film. He saw fragmented images, Li Chen fighting a monster that shouldn't appear until chapter 14. Mei Ling falling in a corridor he didn't recognize. Himself standing before a blank screen, utterly lost. Asterisk database corruption complete. Future reliability, 0%. Historical data, 42% fragmented. Interface functionality, minimal. Warning, cheat system compromised beyond recovery, asterisk. The words hung in his vision, then dissolved into gibberish, random characters, mathematical symbols, fragments of languages he didn't recognize. The plot spoiler interface, his one advantage in this death game, was gone. What remained was a broken tool, showing only garbled nonsense. 455. Zhang Wei slammed his palm against the transmit button. Back in the reactor core, Li Chen's combat display pinged. The shutdown codes appeared on his wrist-mounted interface. He didn't hesitate. Disengaging from Zhao Min, he lunged for the main console, his fingers moving faster than humanly possible, protagonist reflexes, honed through countless battles. Zhao Min saw what was happening. No, she screamed, raising her pistol. But Mei Ling was there, firing her own weapon, not at Zhao Min, but at the ceiling above her. A support beam cracked, raining debris that forced the regressor back. Li Chen input the codes. Alpha, 7, Beta, 9, Gamma, 3. The reactor's hum changed pitch, dropping from a building roar to a shuddering whine. The green light flickered, dimmed. The countdown froze at 412, then began scrolling backward as containment fields re-engaged, coolant systems flushing the core with cryogenic fluids. Steam billowed from vents. Warning klaxons fell silent one by one. Zhao Min stared at the console, her regressor's confidence shattered. Impossible, she whispered. That wasn't in the script. That wasn't in any script. Li Chen turned, his glowing eyes finding Zhang Wei as he stumbled back into the reactor room. You did it. We did it, Zhang Wei corrected, his voice hoarse. He could feel the absence like a phantom limb, the quiet in his mind where the interface had lived. No more warnings about future traps. No more hints about hidden paths. Just his own knowledge, his own instincts. Mei Ling moved to his side, her hand finding his. Your eyes, she said softly. They're normal. Zhang Wei realized she was right. The subtle glow that had accompanied his interface usage, a side effect he'd barely noticed, was gone. He was just a man now. A man in a death game with no cheat codes. Li Chen secured Zhao Min with energy binders from his pack. The regressor didn't resist, just stared blankly at the shutdown reactor as if witnessing the collapse of her entire worldview. For a long moment, there was silence. The only sounds were the hiss of cooling systems and their own ragged breathing. Then the arena's speakers crackled to life. Not the usual system announcements with their sterile, automated tone. This voice was different, multiple voices layered together, speaking in unison, dripping with cold fury. Anomaly detected. Narrative deviation beyond acceptable parameters. Reactor shutdown contradicts plotline 8 beta. Zhang Wei looked up. Li Chen and Mei Ling did the same. The voice continued. Viewer engagement metrics indicate dissatisfaction with predictable outcomes. Entertainment value compromised by unforeseen variables. A holographic display materialized in the center of the reactor room, not showing player stats or safe zones, but something far more chilling. A live feed of interdimensional viewers, their forms shifting and impossible to comprehend, scrolling comments in languages that hurt to look at. Boring. Too easy. Eliminate the glitch. The layered voices spoke again, final and absolute. Final phase initiated. All anomalies must be purged. Arena collapse in 1 hour. Survival probability, 0.3%. May the most entertaining deaths commence. The hologram vanished. Silence returned, deeper and more profound than before. Zhang Wei looked at his hands, then at Mei Ling, at Li Chen, at the captured Zhao Min. No spoilers to guide him now. No foreknowledge to exploit. Just 1 hour. And the certain knowledge that the game masters weren't just watching anymore. They were coming to clean up their broken story. The air tasted of ozone and desperation. Zhang Wei leaned against the cold metal wall of Data Terminal Delta 9, his breathing shallow. Beside him, Mei Ling pressed a fresh bandage to her side, her face pale but determined. Across the chamber, Li Chen stood guard over the bound Zhao Min, whose eyes burned with cold calculation even in defeat. 1 hour, Zhang Wei whispered, the words tasting like ash. Survival probability, 0.3%. The numbers hung in the sterile air, a death sentence delivered with clinical precision. His plot spoiler interface remained dark, not just inactive, but dead. Where once cryptic annotations had danced at the edges of his vision, now there was only static, broken fragments of text that made no sense. Crimson, pillar, false, the words flickered and died, leaving him with nothing but his own fading memories of a novel he'd read lifetimes ago. We need to move, Li Chen said, his voice cutting through the silence. The game masters won't wait. Zhang Wei pushed himself upright, ignoring the dizziness that threatened to pull him under. The arena's structural weak point, he said, the memory surfacing like a bubble from deep water. In the original novel, there was a central support pillar. If it collapses, the entire arena goes down with it, Zhao Min finished, a cruel smile touching his lips. You're planning to bring the house down early. How delightfully suicidal. Mei Ling's eyes widened. But if we're still inside. We won't be, Zhang Wei said, the plan crystallizing in his mind. We use the collapse to create an opening. The underground transit line, it runs beneath the arena. If we can reach it before the structural failure becomes catastrophic. Li Chen's predatory eyes narrowed. You remember this from your cheat? Residual knowledge, Zhang Wei corrected, the term bitter on his tongue. Fragments. But it's all we have. They moved through the access tunnels, a ragged procession of 4. Zhang Wei led, relying on muscle memory from earlier explorations. The ventilation shafts he'd scavenged from, the trap locations he'd avoided, these were etched into his body if not his interface. Mei Ling limped beside him, her hand occasionally brushing his arm for support. Behind them, Li Chen dragged Zhao Min, the regressor's bonds tight enough to leave angry red marks on his wrists. The central chamber loomed ahead, a vast cylindrical space dominated by the pillar. It rose from floor to ceiling, 30 meters of reinforced alloy and crystalline conduits that pulsed with sickly green light. Around its base, rebel players had gathered, 24 survivors who'd heard Zhang Wei's broadcast and chosen rebellion over compliance. Their faces were gaunt, their weapons makeshift, but their eyes held a fire that hadn't been there before. Lin Feng. A woman with shorn hair and tactical armor stepped forward. We heard your broadcast. The game masters, they're really farming us. Zhang Wei nodded, his throat tight. Every death, every moment of suffering, it's entertainment for interdimensional viewers. We're not players. We're performers in a slaughterhouse theater. A murmur ran through the group. One man, younger than the others, began to weep silently. We have one chance, Zhang Wei continued, raising his voice. That pillar is the arena's heart. We bring it down, we create chaos. The underground transit line runs directly beneath us. If we can reach it during the collapse. If, Zhao Min sneered. Such a small word for such a large gamble. Li Chen shoved him to his knees. Quiet. They set to work with desperate efficiency. The rebels had scavenged explosives from armories and maintenance bays, thermal charges, demolition packs, even jury-rigged plasma cells. Zhang Wei directed their placement, recalling not from his interface but from half-remembered engineering diagrams in the novel's appendices. Place charges at stress points, avoid the crystalline conduits, thermal bloom will follow the alloy seams. His hands shook as he wired the final charge. The stun grenade from Armory B felt heavy in his pocket, a last resort he hoped not to use. Mei Ling worked beside him, her fingers surprisingly steady as she connected detonators. We're almost out of time, she whispered. 40 minutes. The first attack came without warning. Gunfire erupted from the upper catwalks, bullets ricocheting off the pillar with sharp metallic pings. Zhang Wei threw himself behind a console, pulling Mei Ling down with him. Around them, rebels scrambled for cover, returning fire with whatever weapons they had. Kong's alliance, someone shouted. They've come to stop us. Zhang Wei peered over the console's edge. Kong stood on the central catwalk, flanked by 8 well-armed fighters. The man was everything the novel had described, broad-shouldered, with a tactical visor covering his eyes and a heavy plasma rifle in his hands. But Zhang Wei remembered something else, a throwaway line from early chapters that had seemed insignificant at the time. Asterisk Kong's fear, enclosed spaces. Childhood trauma from being trapped in a storage locker for 3 days, asterisk. Mei Ling, Zhang Wei said, his mind racing. The ventilation shaft we used to reach Lab Gamma 12, is there an access point near the eastern catwalk? She nodded, understanding dawning in her eyes. The maintenance hatch. It leads to the narrowest part of the shaft system. Perfect. Zhang Wei moved, staying low. He signaled to 2 rebels, a man with a sniper rifle and a woman with smoke grenades. Draw their fire. I need 30 seconds. The woman nodded, pulling the pins on 2 grenades and rolling them toward Kong's position. Thick gray smoke billowed upward, obscuring the catwalk. The sniper began firing, not to hit but to keep heads down. Zhang Wei sprinted for the eastern wall, his lungs burning. The maintenance hatch was exactly where Mei Ling had said, a small, unmarked panel near floor level. He pried it open with his combat knife, revealing a dark shaft barely wide enough for a man to crawl through. Kong, he shouted, his voice echoing in the chamber. The Game Masters promised you immunity, didn't they? Special treatment for keeping the rebellion in check. From within the smoke, Kong's voice boomed. You're destabilizing the narrative, Lin Feng. The system needs order. Order. Zhang Wei laughed, the sound harsh and ragged. You think crawling through narrow vents to plant surveillance devices is order? I read your file, Kong. All those tight spaces you had to squeeze through. Must bring back memories. A hesitation in the gunfire. Zhang Wei pressed the advantage. Remember the storage locker? 3 days without food or water. The darkness pressing in. Shut up. Kong's voice cracked, the first hint of panic bleeding through. This shaft leads right to your position, Zhang Wei said, dropping his voice to a conspiratorial whisper that somehow carried through the chaos. I could crawl through right now. Come up behind you. You'd never see me coming until I was right there in that enclosed space with you. No. The plasma rifle fired wildly, bolts of energy scorching the ceiling. Kong was backing away, his breathing audible even over the gunfire. His fighters looked confused, their discipline breaking as their leader faltered. Now. Zhang Wei shouted. The rebels seized the opening. They rushed the catwalk from both sides, overwhelming Kong's disoriented alliance in close-quarters combat. Zhang Wei watched as Kong dropped his rifle and fled back through the access door, his fear of enclosed spaces overriding his loyalty to the Game Masters. The cost came moments later. A stray bullet caught Zhang Wei in the shoulder as he turned to rejoin Mei Ling. The impact spun him around, hot pain blossoming across his upper body. He stumbled, catching himself against the pillar. Blood soaked through his jacket, dark and wet. Zhang Wei. Mei Ling was at his side, pressing her hands against the wound. Medkit. Someone get a medkit. No time, he gritted out. The charges. Detonate them. Li Chen appeared, dragging Zhao Min with him. You're bleeding out. It's not arterial. Zhang Wei hoped he was right. Do it. before more reinforcements arrive. Mei Ling helped him to the detonator console. His fingers left bloody smears on the controls. Around them, the rebels formed a protective circle, their weapons trained on every entrance. On my mark, Zhang Wei said. 3, 2, 1. He pressed the button. The world dissolved into sound and light. First came the deep, shuddering whomp of the thermal charges igniting. Then the sharper cracks of demolition packs. The pillar groaned, a sound of ancient metal stressed beyond endurance. Crystalline conduits shattered, spraying green liquid that hissed and smoked where it struck the floor. A crack appeared at the pillar's base, thin as a hairline at first, then widening with terrifying speed. It climbed upward, branching like lightning frozen in alloy. The entire chamber began to shake, dust and debris raining from the ceiling. "It's working," someone shouted. "Too well," another cried as a section of ceiling collapsed, crushing a console in a shower of sparks. Zhang Wei's vision swam. The pain in his shoulder was a white-hot brand, and the blood loss made the world tilt at odd angles. He clung to the console, watching as the pillar listed to one side, its structural integrity failing by the second. And then it happened. His plot spoiler interface, dead and dark for what felt like forever, flickered to life. Not the full display, not the cryptic annotations he'd relied on. Just a single line of text, clear and sharp against the darkness behind his eyes, glowing with final, desperate clarity. Asterisk escape route, underground transit line, but guarded by final boss, asterisk. The message hung there for 3 heartbeats, a last gift from a broken system, a final spoiler from a cheat that had cost him everything. Then the interface went dark again, this time forever. And as the pillar cracked completely, beginning its catastrophic collapse toward the chamber floor, Zhang Wei knew 2 things with absolute certainty. They had their escape route. And something waited for them there in the dark. The world was coming apart at the seams. Zhang Wei stumbled backward as the central pillar gave way with a groan that shook the very foundations of the arena. Cracks spiderwebbed across the ceiling, raining down chunks of reinforced concrete and twisted metal. The air filled with dust and the screams of collapsing infrastructure. Through the chaos, he saw it, the underground transit line his corrupted interface had promised, revealed now as the floor plates peeled away like the skin of some dying beast. But the transit line wasn't empty. From the newly exposed depths rose a monstrosity that defied comprehension. It was biomechanical, a fusion of pulsating organic tissue and rusted steel plating. 12 meters tall, with 6 segmented legs that ended in razor-sharp claws capable of tearing through reinforced concrete. Its body was a mass of exposed wiring that glowed with sickly green light, and where a head should have been, there was only a single massive optical sensor that swept across the rebels with predatory focus. The interface's final warning echoed in Zhang Wei's mind, escape route guarded by final boss. Fall back. Zhang Wei shouted, his voice raw. The gunshot wound in his shoulder screamed with every movement, blood soaking through the makeshift bandage Mei Ling had applied. It's the arena's last defense mechanism. Li Chen was already moving, his glowing predatory eyes fixed on the creature. I'll draw its attention. You find a weakness. No. Zhang Wei grabbed his arm. It charges. In the novel, it always charges first. That's when the core is exposed. The words felt hollow without the interface's confirmation. This was pure memory now, fragments of a novel he'd read in another life, details that might have been changed, might have been wrong. But it was all he had left. Mei Ling limped to his side, her face pale but determined. What do you need? Distraction. When it charges, the chest plating retracts for 3 seconds. That's our window. Li Chen nodded, his expression unreadable. The temporary alliance held by the thinnest of threads. I'll make it charge. He moved with the unnatural grace of the protagonist, leaping over fallen debris as the biomechanical boss turned its sensor toward him. Zhang Wei watched, heart hammering against his ribs. This was the moment, the divergence from the plot. In the novel, Li Chen had fought this thing alone, using his overpowered abilities to tear it apart after it charged. But now Zhang Wei was here, wounded, with no spoilers, trying to coordinate a fight he was never meant to witness. The boss's legs tensed. Its body lowered, hydraulic systems hissing. Then it charged. The ground shook as it moved, faster than anything that size should have been capable of. Li Chen danced aside at the last moment, the creature's claws tearing through the space where he'd been standing. And there it was, just as Zhang Wei remembered, the chest plating retracted, revealing a pulsating core of crystalline energy protected by only a thin membrane of organic tissue. Now! Zhang Wei screamed. Mei Ling threw the stun grenade she'd been clutching. It wasn't much, scavenged from Armory B chapters ago, but it was enough. The flash and concussive blast made the creature stumble, its charge interrupted. Zhang Wei was already moving, ignoring the agony in his shoulder, grabbing a length of fallen rebar that had been exposed by the collapse. He remembered the ventilation shafts, the hidden paths, all the knowledge he'd accumulated. But none of it mattered now. This was brute force and timing. The boss recovered faster than expected, its sensor locking onto Zhang Wei. One of its claws swept toward him. He dove, feeling the wind of its passage, rolling to his feet as the claw embedded itself in the floor. 3 seconds. He had 3 seconds. Li Chen was there, his hands glowing with energy as he grabbed another claw, holding it back with sheer strength. Do it. Zhang Wei lunged, the makeshift spear held like a javelin. The core glowed brighter as he approached, as if sensing the threat. He could see his reflection in the optical sensor, Lin Feng's face, streaked with blood and dust, eyes wild with desperation. He threw. The rebar flew true, piercing the membrane with a sound like shattering glass. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the core flashed white-hot, and the creature screamed, a sound that was part mechanical shriek, part biological agony. Energy erupted from the wound, throwing Zhang Wei backward. He hit the ground hard, the impact driving the air from his lungs. Through blurred vision, he saw the boss stagger, its legs buckling as the green light in its wiring flickered and died. It collapsed with a final, shuddering crash that sent tremors through the crumbling arena. Silence, for 3 precious heartbeats. Then Mei Ling was at his side, her hands pressing against the new wound in his chest where shrapnel from the explosion had torn through. You're bleeding. Badly. Zhang Wei tried to speak, but only a wet cough came out. He could feel the warmth spreading across his torso, mixing with the blood from his shoulder. Near fatal wounds, the outline had promised. He hadn't realized how literal it would be. Li Chen approached, his glowing eyes assessing the situation. The transit line. They helped Zhang Wei to his feet, half carrying him toward the exposed platform. The underground line was a relic of the arena's construction, a maglev system meant for maintenance, now their only hope of escape. But as they reached the platform, the hope died in Zhang Wei's throat. Only one pod remained functional. The others were crushed under fallen debris or showed systems completely dark. The single working pod was small, built for 2 at most, and its power indicators flickered uncertainly. The arena groaned around them, entire sections collapsing now. They had minutes, maybe less. Mei Ling's eyes met Zhang Wei's. Li Chen stood apart, his expression unreadable. The temporary alliance shattered in that moment, replaced by the brutal arithmetic of survival. 1 pod. 3 people. Zhang Wei looked at Mei Ling, the timid side character who should have died chapters ago, who had fought beside him when the spoilers failed. He looked at Li Chen, the protagonist whose fate he'd manipulated, whose story he'd broken. And he looked at the blood on his hands, his own and the arena's, and knew the choice was his to make. The pod's door hissed open, revealing a cramped interior with 2 seats. The controls glowed with emergency power. Somewhere above, the game masters were watching, waiting to see how this final variable would resolve itself. Zhang Wei opened his mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. The world was fading at the edges, darkness creeping in. He had broken the system, rewritten the story, survived against a 0.3% probability. And now, at the threshold of escape, he faced the one spoiler he'd never had, his own ending. Who escapes? The transit platform shuddered violently beneath their feet, a deep groaning sound echoing through the collapsing arena as if the very structure was screaming its final breaths. Zhang Wei leaned heavily against a cracked support beam, his breathing ragged and wet. Blood soaked through the makeshift bandages on his shoulder and chest, each pulse sending fresh waves of agony through his body. The escape pod stood before them, a sleek, metallic capsule with a single illuminated control panel, its hatch open like a promise of salvation. Only 1 pod. Li Chen stood closest to it, his glowing predatory eyes scanning the platform with calculated efficiency. The overpowered protagonist who had once been his destined killer now stood as an uneasy ally, his hands still stained with the biomechanical boss's fluids. Mei Ling hovered near Zhang Wei, her own wound stabilized but her face pale with exhaustion and pain. Behind them, the remaining rebel players, those who had survived Kong's attack and the boss battle, clustered in small groups, their eyes fixed on a single escape route with desperate hope. It can only carry two, Li Chen said, his voice flat and factual. He'd already accessed the pod systems, his fingers dancing over the control panel. Life support, propulsion, structural integrity, all calibrated for a maximum of 2 occupants. Any more and the systems will fail during launch. Zhang Wei coughed, tasting copper. His plot spoiler interface was dark now, completely silent after that final flicker of clarity. No cryptic annotations, no future warnings, no hidden paths. Just the raw, remembered details from the novel he'd read in another life, and even those were fading, blurred by pain and blood loss. He pushed himself upright, ignoring the way his vision swam. Mei Ling goes, he said, the words coming out more forceful than he expected. And you, Li Chen. Mei Ling's eyes widened. What? No. Listen to me, Zhang Wei interrupted, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. This is how it has to be. The protagonist survives. That's the rule of every story. If Li Chen dies here, the narrative collapses completely, the game masters win. And you. He looked at her, this timid side character who was never supposed to make it past chapter 3. You deserve to live more than any of us. Li Chen's expression didn't change, but his eyes narrowed slightly. You would sacrifice yourself? After everything you've done to survive? That's the twist, Zhang Wei said, a bitter smile touching his lips. The trash villain who was supposed to die in the opening minutes, now dies in the final act to save the hero. Poetic, isn't it? Another tremor rocked the platform. Cracks spiderwebbed across the ceiling above them, dust and debris raining down. One of the support beams groaned and snapped, crashing to the floor mere meters away. The rebels scattered, panic rising in their voices. We don't have time for this, a woman shouted from the back. Either get in or let someone else try. Zhang Wei took a step toward the pod, then another. Each movement sent fresh agony through his chest, but he forced himself forward. Get in. Both of you. That's an order. Mei Ling shook her head, tears streaking through the grime on her face. No. We came this far together. I'm not leaving you behind. You have to, Zhang Wei said, his voice softening. Remember what I told you back in the ventilation shafts. About being more than what the story says you are. This is your chance. Take it. He reached the pod's hatch and placed a bloody hand against the cool metal. The control panel glowed with soft blue light, displaying system readouts. 2 occupancy slots. Life support optimal for 2. Propulsion ready. Everything calibrated for exactly 2 living beings. Li Chen moved to the other side of the hatch, his movements precise and economical. He's right, he said to Mei Ling, though his eyes remained on Zhang Wei. Statistical survival probability increases by 47% if we depart within the next 90 seconds. Every second beyond that reduces our chances exponentially. Then go. Zhang Wei snapped. Stop analyzing and just go. Mei Ling didn't move. Instead, her hands went to the small pouch at her belt, the one she'd scavenged from Data Terminal Delta 9 back when Zhang Wei still had his interface. When he'd sacrificed future reliability for shutdown codes. Her fingers worked quickly, pulling out a small, rectangular device with exposed circuitry. What are you doing? Zhang Wei asked. Hacking the pod, she said, her voice suddenly steady. Zhao Min taught me some things while we were prisoners together. Back doors. Overrides. The regressor knew how to break systems. There's no time. There's always time, she interrupted, her fingers flying over the device. You taught me that. When the safe zone was a trap. When the reactor was melting down. When Kong attacked. You always found the time. She connected the device to the pod's control panel. Sparks flew. Warning lights flashed red. The system voice chimed, warning, unauthorized access detected. Life support systems compromised. Mei Ling, stop. Zhang Wei reached for her, but his legs buckled. He caught himself against the pod's frame, breathing heavily. I'm overriding the occupancy limit, she said, her voice tight with concentration. Recalibrating life support for 3. Rerouting power from non-essential systems. It'll be tight, and the pod might not make it all the way, but it's better than leaving you here. Li Chen watched her work, his glowing eyes calculating probabilities. Success rate? 30%, Mei Ling admitted. Maybe less. Better than zero, Li Chen said after a moment's pause. He moved to help her, his own knowledge of systems complementing her hacked device. Together, they worked as the platform continued to disintegrate around them. Zhang Wei wanted to protest. Wanted to tell them to stop, to just go, to save themselves. But the words died in his throat. He was so tired. So hurt. And part of him, the part that had fought so hard to survive, to break the narrative, to become more than a disposable character, that part wanted to live. The ceiling above them cracked open. A massive chunk of concrete and steel crashed down, crushing two rebel players who hadn't moved fast enough. Their screams were cut off abruptly. The remaining rebels were scrambling now, some trying to force their way onto the pod, others looking for alternative routes that didn't exist. Almost, there. Mei Ling grunted. The control panel flickered. The red warning lights shifted to an unstable yellow. The system voice stuttered, "Oh, override, AC accepted. Occupancy limit, temporarily, bypassed. Get in." Li Chen ordered, grabbing Zhang Wei and half-dragging, half-carrying him into the pod. The interior was cramped even for two, a tight space with 3 acceleration couches arranged in a triangle. For 3 people, it would be nearly impossible. Mei Ling scrambled in after them, pulling the hatch closed behind her. Through the small viewport, Zhang Wei saw the remaining rebels, maybe 8 or 9 of them, watching with despair as their last hope sealed itself away. One of them, a man with a burned face from the reactor incident, met Zhang Wei's eyes through the viewport. He nodded once, then turned away to face the collapsing arena. Launch sequence initiated, Li Chen said, strapping himself into the central couch. Brace for acceleration. Mei Ling helped Zhang Wei into the left couch, her hand surprisingly gentle as she secured the restraints over his bleeding wounds. She took the right couch, her own restraints snapping into place just as the pod's engines roared to life. The launch threw them back into their seats with brutal force. Zhang Wei's vision went white with pain as the acceleration pressed against his injuries. Through the viewport, he saw the transit platform recede, saw the remaining rebels watching as the ceiling finally gave way, tons of debris crashing down to bury them. Saw the entire arena imploding in on itself, a catastrophic collapse that swallowed everything, the biomechanical boss's remains, Kong's defeated alliance, Zhao Min's prison, the central pillar they destroyed, every trap and turret and hidden path. Everything he'd survived. Everything he'd broken. The pod shot upward through a maintenance shaft, metal screaming against metal as it scraped through 2 narrow passages. Warning lights flashed. Alarms blared. The life support system stuttered, the air growing thin for a heart-stopping moment before stabilizing. And in that moment, as the arena vanished into destruction below them, Zhang Wei's plot spoiler interface, completely dark, utterly corrupted, flickered one final time. Not with cryptic annotations. Not with future warnings. Not with hidden paths or character motives. Just 3 words, glowing in his mind's eye before fading forever. Asterisk narrative broken, survival achieved, asterisk. Then it was gone. Truly gone. The last connection to the novel he'd read, to the spoilers that had been his cheat, to the meta-knowledge that had let him outsmart overpowered opponents and exploit narrative loopholes. The interface didn't just go dark, it vanished from his awareness completely, as if it had never existed at all. The cost of survival. The price of breaking the story. The pod burst free of the collapsing arena, shooting out into nothing. White space. Pure, featureless, endless white. No stars, no planets, no debris from the destroyed death game. Just an infinite expanse of blank emptiness that stretched in every direction. The pod's engines cut out. They drifted, weightless and silent. For a long moment, no one spoke. Li Chen checked the instruments, his glowing eyes reflecting the control panel's lights. Mei Ling reached across the cramped space to take Zhang Wei's hand, her fingers trembling but warm. Then a new voice filled the pod, crisp, mechanical, utterly devoid of the game master's theatrical malice. "Welcome to the multiversal audit," it said. "Your actions have been noted." The words hung in the air. Zhang Wei tried to speak, but his throat was too dry, his injuries too severe. He could only watch as a new interface, clean, white, utterly unfamiliar, appeared on the pod's main screen. It displayed a single line of text. Anomaly Lin Feng, Zhang Wei narrative disruption rating, 98.7%. Recommended for observation. Then the screen went blank. And in the endless white space outside, something began to form. The white space stretched endlessly in all directions, a featureless void that seemed to swallow sound, light, and time itself. Zhang Wei floated in its center, his body weightless, the searing pain in his shoulder and chest reduced to a dull, persistent ache. Beside him, Mei Ling drifted like a ghost, her eyes wide with disbelief. Li Chen hung a few feet away, his predatory gaze scanning the emptiness, muscles coiled as if expecting an ambush. No floor. No ceiling. No walls. Just infinite white. Is this death? Zhang Wei wondered, his mind still reeling from the arena's final implosion, the deafening roar of collapsing metal, the heat of escaping gases, the terrifying lurch as their pod shot through disintegrating reality. His plot spoiler interface was gone, truly gone. Where once cryptic annotations had danced at the edge of his vision, now there was only static, a faint, gray fuzz like dead television snow. He tried to summon it, to will some fragment of foreknowledge into existence, but nothing responded. The cheat that had saved him so many times was now just another scar. A voice echoed through the void, genderless and calm. Welcome, survivors. 3 figures materialized before them, humanoid but indistinct, their forms shimmering like heat haze. They wore simple gray robes and hovered without visible support. The central one spoke, its mouth not moving. We are auditors from the Multiversal Oversight Committee. You have been extracted from Simulation Delta 7, codenamed Death Game Arena. Your actions have triggered a mandatory review. Li Chen bristled. Who are you? What is this place? A neutral zone between realities, the auditor replied. A debriefing chamber. Please, remain calm. We mean you no harm. Zhang Wei's instinct screamed danger, every spoiler he'd ever read had warned about trusting mysterious entities, but without his interface, he had only his wits. He forced himself to breathe, to assess. The auditors showed no weapons, no aggressive postures. Their presence felt administrative. Like bureaucrats. The death game, Mei Ling whispered, her voice trembling. It was real. It was an illegal experiment, the left auditor said, its tone dripping with disapproval. A rogue faction within the multiversal entertainment industry created Simulation Delta 7 without proper authorization. They kidnapped individuals from various realities, altered their memories, and forced them to participate in a lethal battle royale for interdimensional viewers. Your rebellion, specifically, the early collapse of the central pillar and exposure of the transit line, triggered automated alarms. We have been monitoring the situation. Images flickered around them, scenes from the arena. Zhang Wei saw himself avoiding early traps, sabotaging Li Chen's plans, whispering spoilers to Mei Ling. He saw Zhao Min hacking systems in the shadows, Kong's alliance attacking, the biomechanical boss falling. It played like a highlight reel, edited for maximum drama. You were entertainment, the right auditor stated flatly. Your suffering, your strategies, your deaths, all broadcast to paying audiences across dimensions. The system manipulated events to increase tension. Safe zones that weren't safe. Traps that appeared randomly. Character motivations altered midstream. It was unethical. Li Chen's eyes glowed with fury. You watched. You let this happen. We did not know until your actions exposed the breach, the central auditor replied. The rogue faction hid their activities behind layers of encryption. Your decision to break the narrative, to become an unpredictable variable, created data anomalies that our systems detected. You are not victims. You are whistleblowers. The words hung in the white space. Zhang Wei felt a strange mix of emotions, anger, yes, but also vindication. All those times he'd used spoilers to outsmart the system, he'd been fighting something real. Not just plot devices, but actual monsters who treated lives as content. What happens now? Mei Ling asked. We offer you a choice, the central auditor said. Option 1, return to your original realities. Your memories of the death game will be erased, and you will be restored to the moment of your extraction. You will live your lives as if none of this ever happened. Zhang Wei's heart clenched. Return to being Zhang Wei. The office worker from Beijing who died in a traffic accident. The thought was simultaneously tempting and terrifying. He could go back to his old life, the bland apartment, the tedious job, the lonely evenings. But he'd also be leaving behind everything he'd become. Lin Feng. The survivor. The variable. Option 2, the auditor continued. Remain in multiversal space as observers. Your unique experiences, particularly your ability to disrupt corrupted systems, make you valuable to our committee. We would employ you to identify and dismantle other illegal simulations. You would travel between realities, gather evidence, and assist in shutting down operations like Delta 7. What about our wounds? Zhang Wei gestured to his shoulder, the blood-stained fabric of his shirt. In the white space, the injuries seemed frozen, painful but not worsening. Medical reconstruction is part of either option, the left auditor said. If you choose to stay, we will heal you fully and enhance your physical capabilities to standard observer levels. No supernatural cheats, just peak human conditioning and access to basic investigative tools. Li Chen frowned. You want us to work for you? We want to give you purpose, the central auditor corrected. And justice. The rogue faction is still at large. Other games are still running. Your knowledge of how they operate, from the inside, is irreplaceable. Silence stretched. Zhang Wei looked at Mei Ling. Her timid demeanor had hardened during their alliance. Now, he saw steel in her eyes. She gave a slight nod. Li Chen's expression was unreadable, but his glowing gaze had dimmed to a thoughtful simmer. I'll return, Li Chen said finally. My world, there are people waiting. A life I need to finish living. The auditors nodded. A wise choice. Your courage will be remembered. They turned to Zhang Wei and Mei Ling. And you? Zhang Wei closed his eyes. He thought of the plot spoiler interface, the way it had shown him hidden paths, future traps, character motives. It had been a crutch, but also a curse. Without it, who was he? Just Lin Feng, the arrogant young master? No. He was more than that now. He was the variable who'd broken a narrative. The trash villain who'd outsmarted gods. I'll stay, he said, his voice firm. But not as Zhang Wei. That person died in a traffic accident. I'm Lin Feng now, with Zhang Wei's memories, but Lin Feng's identity. This is who I choose to be. Mei Ling smiled, a real, genuine smile that lit up her face. I'll stay too. I don't want to go back to being the timid girl who dies early. I want to fight. The auditors seemed to approve. Very well. The transition will begin. A shimmering portal opened beside Li Chen. Through it, Zhang Wei caught a glimpse of a bustling city street, his old world. Li Chen hesitated, then looked at Zhang Wei. You saved my life in there. More than once. Thank you. You would have survived anyway, Zhang Wei said. You're the protagonist. Li Chen's lips quirked. Not in this story. He stepped through the portal, and it vanished. Pain lanced through Zhang Wei's body, sharp, cleansing. He gasped as his wounds knit themselves together, flesh regenerating, blood vessels sealing. Beside him, Mei Ling glowed with soft light as her own injuries healed. When the process finished, they stood whole, strong, dressed in simple gray observer uniforms. Your first mission briefing will commence shortly, the central auditor said. You will be deployed to Simulation Gamma 2, a fantasy death game masquerading as a hero's journey. Your task, infiltrate, gather evidence of manipulation, and trigger a system collapse. Do you accept? Zhang Wei exchanged a glance with Mei Ling. This was it, no spoilers, no foreknowledge. Just their skills, their wits, and each other. We accept. The auditors began to fade. Then prepare. The multiverse is vast, and its shadows are deep. As they dissolved into the white, Zhang Wei felt a flicker at the edge of his vision, a ghost of his old interface. The static shifted, coalescing into a single, cryptic line of text that hung for just a second before vanishing. Asterisk multiverse conspiracy deeper than thought, watch your back, asterisk. He froze. That wasn't static. That was a message. But from who? The interface was supposed to be dead. Unless. Did you see that? Mei Ling asked, her voice low. Yeah, Zhang Wei whispered. I saw it. Around them, the white space began to morph, colors bleeding in, shapes forming the outline of a new world. A fantasy landscape with towering spires and lurking monsters. Their first mission. But Zhang Wei's mind raced. If his interface could still send messages, then maybe it wasn't completely gone. Maybe something, or someone, was still connected to it. And that warning, it felt like a spoiler from a story he hadn't read yet. He straightened his uniform, pushing the thought aside. For now, they had a job to do. But as the new reality solidified around them, he made a silent promise, he'd watch his back. And he'd find out who, or what, was still sending him annotations. The white space vanished, replaced by the scent of damp earth and distant magic. They stood at the edge of a dark forest, mission parameters flashing in their minds. Zhang Wei took Mei Ling's hand, and together, they stepped forward into the unknown. The sterile white of the observation chamber dissolved into a kaleidoscope of fractured light. Zhang Wei, no, Lin Feng now, he reminded himself, felt the familiar vertigo of transit, but this time without the comforting glow of the plot spoiler interface. Only static hummed in his peripheral vision, a ghost limb of knowledge severed. Beside him, Mei Ling's hand tightened on his arm, her knuckles pale against the black fabric of their observer uniforms. They materialized not in an arena, but in the opulent viewing gallery of a floating citadel, all crystalline spires and holographic displays showing screaming players below. "Welcome to the Celestial Colosseum," a smooth synthetic voice announced. "Your cover identities are established, Lin Feng, disgraced noble seeking redemption through service, Mei Ling, his loyal aide. Your mission, infiltrate the Game Master's network, expose the corruption, and extract the 12 marked players before the final purge in 48 hours. Lin Feng's eyes scanned the gallery. Below, a desert biome sprawled under twin suns, dotted with ancient ruins and prowling sand serpents. Players, 30 of them, according to the displays, scurried like insects, their panic palpable even from this height. But his attention fixed on the overseers, 3 figures in iridescent robes, their faces obscured by light-bending masks, manipulating the environment with casual flicks of their wrists. One raised a hand, and a canyon collapsed, swallowing 2 players whole. The audience, floating orbs representing interdimensional viewers, emitted pulses of approving light. No spoilers. No cryptic annotations about hidden paths or future traps. Just the raw experience of a death game veteran, and the residual plot sense that had become bone-deep instinct. Lin Feng felt its absence like a missing tooth, constantly probed by his tongue. But he also felt something new, a cold clarity. The interface was gone, but the lessons remained, the narrative rhythms, the tropes, the predictable cruelty of storytellers who thought themselves gods. "We need access to the control nexus," Mei Ling whispered, her eyes darting to a sealed archway guarded by 2 hulking automata. "The briefing said it's behind the overseer's podium." Lin Feng nodded, already moving. His steps were measured, his posture the perfect blend of arrogance and deference he'd practiced as Lin Feng the young master. The stun grenade from Armory B was a comforting weight in his hidden pocket, but his real weapon was the script he'd internalized. Death games loved dramatic reveals. They loved turning allies into traitors. They loved last-minute rescues. He would give them a show they couldn't control. He approached the central overseer, the one who'd collapsed the canyon. "Honored Master," Lin Feng said, bowing just shallow enough to imply respect without submission. "I have observed a potential anomaly in Sector 7. A player appears to be using unauthorized frequency modulation, possibly a smuggled dampener." It was a lie, of course. But a plausible one, crafted from his memory of how the original novel system detected cheats. The overseer's mask tilted. "Show me." Lin Feng guided him to a secondary display, away from the archway. As the overseer leaned in, Lin Feng's hand brushed the control panel, a subtle gesture, but enough to trigger a distraction protocol Mei Ling had prepped using Zhao Min's backdoor techniques. Alarms blared across half the screens, showing false data corruption. The other 2 overseers spun toward the chaos. "Now," Lin Feng mouthed to Mei Ling. She slipped past the distracted guards, her small frame vanishing into the archway's shadows. Lin Feng stayed, playing his part. "It seems to be a cascading error in the environmental regulators," he said, injecting just the right amount of concern. "If it spreads, it could destabilize the entire biome." The overseer hissed, his fingers flying over the controls. "Impossible. The systems are flawless." "Even flawless systems have weaknesses," Lin Feng said softly, echoing something Zhang Wei had read in a long-forgotten chapter. "Especially when the storytellers grow complacent." For a second, the overseer froze. Then he laughed, a sound like grinding glass. "You think you understand the narrative? You're a bit player, Lin Feng. A cameo in a grander tale." "Maybe," Lin Feng said. "But cameos can steal the scene." He felt it then, a flicker in the static of his dead interface. Not words, not spoilers, but a sensation, a gut-deep pull toward the western ruins. Residual plot sense, honed by surviving a story that should have killed him. He excused himself with another bow and descended into the game zone via a maintenance shaft he'd noted earlier, one of the hidden ventilation paths his old self would have known from spoilers, now remembered through sheer repetition. The desert heat hit him like a physical blow. Sand crunched under his boots, and the twin suns beat down with merciless intensity. Around him, the ruins rose like broken teeth, all sandstone and cryptic glyphs. He moved with purpose, avoiding the patrol routes of sand serpents. Their nesting patterns, he recalled, were diurnal, another fragment of novel knowledge. His goal, the marked players. According to the briefing, they were political dissidents from a conquered world, kidnapped to die for entertainment. Freeing them would expose the Colosseum's illegality to the auditors. He found the first group huddled in a collapsed temple, 3 of them, gaunt and terrified, their wrists branded with glowing runes. "I'm here to get you out," Lin Feng said, keeping his voice low. "But we need to move. The overseers are distracted, but not for long." One of them, a woman with scars across her cheeks, glared. "Another trick? Another hope to crush?" "No tricks," Lin Feng said. "Just a man who's tired of watching people die for someone else's story." He led them through the ruins, using his knowledge of trap locations, not from spoilers, but from logic. The novel's death games always placed pressure plates near treasure caches. Here, the glyphs on the walls matched patterns he'd seen in the original arena's armory. He pointed to a seemingly solid floor tile. "Don't step there. It'll trigger a spike pit." The scarred woman stared. "How did you know?" "I've read this book before," Lin Feng said, and it wasn't entirely a lie. They rendezvoused with Mei Ling at a prearranged coordinates, a dry oasis where she'd hacked a secondary transit line. She'd freed 6 more players, her face smudged with dust but eyes bright with triumph. "The control nexus is a mess," she reported. "I planted data spikes that'll broadcast the corruption logs in 12 hours. But the primary overseer, he's coming. He knows we're here." As if summoned, the air shimmered. The central overseer descended from the citadel, not via platform, but by walking on light, his robes billowing in the non-existent wind. The sand serpents fled. The twin suns seemed to dim. "Lin Feng," the overseer said, his voice amplified to a deafening boom. "Or should I call you Zhang Wei? The anomaly who broke a story. The unseen variable." Lin Feng stepped forward, putting himself between the overseer and the players. "You've been watching." "We watch everything," the overseer said. "Your little hack was clever. But this isn't some primitive arena. This is a curated narrative, and I am its author." He raised a hand, and the ruins around them trembled, sandstone grinding against sandstone. "You think your residual knowledge can save you? You have no spoilers. No cheat. Just the fading memory of a book you shouldn't have read." Lin Feng smiled. It was a thin, sharp thing. "You're right. I don't have spoilers. But you just made a classic mistake." "Oh." You monologued. While the overseer spoke, Lin Feng had been counting. In the novel, powerful antagonists always paused for dramatic speeches, exactly 8.5 seconds, on average. He'd timed it. And in those seconds, Mei Ling had finished her real hack, not just data spikes, but a frequency override that tapped into the Citadel's power grid, using the overseer's own connection as a conduit. "You see," Lin Feng said, "in every story, the villain explains his plan because he's sure he's won. But the hero uses that time to set up the counterattack. And I may not be a hero, but I've studied the genre." He pulled the stun grenade from his pocket, not to throw, but to activate its emitter core, modified with a sliver of crystal from the control nexus Mei Ling had smuggled out. The grenade flared, not with light, but with a resonant frequency that matched the overseer's bio-augmentations. A weakness Xiao Min had once mentioned in passing, a regressor's tidbit about celestial overseers being vulnerable to their own energy signatures. The overseer staggered, his mask flickering. "How? You're not the only one who can read ahead," Lin Feng said, and charged. He had no super strength. No glowing eyes like Li Chen. Just the body of Lin Feng, healed but ordinary, and the certainty of a man who'd already died once in a narrative. He ducked under a blast of concussive light, rolled behind a crumbling pillar, and lunged again. The overseer swiped, but Lin Feng was already moving, his actions unpredictable because they weren't powered by spoilers, they were powered by instinct, by the chaos of a variable that refused to follow the script. He remembered the biomechanical boss from the arena. How it had a blind spot when charging. This overseer had a similar pattern, he always telegraphed his attacks with a slight tilt of the head. Lin Feng waited for it, counted the milliseconds, and then threw the modified grenade not at the overseer, but at the ground between them. The crystal fragment shattered, releasing a feedback loop that scrambled the overseer's systems. The overseer screamed, a raw, human sound beneath the synthetic veneer. His mask shattered, revealing a face that was startlingly young, terrified. "You can't, the narrative. The narrative is what we make it," Lin Feng said, and drove a piece of broken sandstone into the overseer's control node, located exactly where the novel's later chapters had described for similar entities. A forgotten detail, buried in a throwaway line about cyborg antagonists. Knowledge, not power. The overseer collapsed, his body dissolving into light particles. Around them, the desert biome flickered. The citadel's holograms winked out. The players stared, dumbfounded. Mei Ling rushed to Lin Feng's side. "The data spike is broadcasting. The auditors are inbound. We did it." Lin Feng breathed heavily, his hands trembling. The static in his vision flickered again, and for a heartbeat, he saw words, not a spoiler, but a hint, pattern recognized, overseer weakness, narrative arrogance, then it was gone, back to static. But the glimpse sent a shiver through him. Was the interface healing? Or was it something else, something tapping into the multiverse's deeper code? They evacuated the players via the hacked transit line, emerging into a sterile debriefing room where interdimensional auditors nodded approvingly. Clean extraction. Exposure successful. The Celestial Colosseum will be shut down. Later, in their temporary quarters, Mei Ling poured 2 glasses of something that tasted like liquid starlight. "To being unseen variables," she said, smiling. Lin Feng clinked his glass against hers. "To writing our own story." For a moment, he allowed himself to relax. The cost was there, constant vigilance, the weight of knowing countless games still operated in the multiverse's shadows, the permanent loss of his old life. But he had Mei Ling. He had purpose. And he had the hard-won knowledge that even without cheats, he could break systems. Then his wristcom buzzed with an incoming message, encrypted on a frequency not even the auditors used. He opened it, and the blood drained from his face. Mei Ling saw his expression. "What is it?" Lin Feng showed her the screen. The words glowed with eerie permanence. "The original author of your novel wants to meet, your story isn't over."